Recording in progress.
Chair Williams, we're about ready to start. I do need to make one announcement that the YouTube feed, the live feed, is not working at this point because of technological problems. However, that is not a participation mode. The Zoom is still working for anybody who wants to speak or interact via the Zoom link. And also, since this is a hybrid meeting, there are people here in person.
Okay, thank you. I actually have not used this before. Welcome to the regular meeting of this Tuesday evening, May 10th. I now call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chair Williams, I'm just going to make one more brief announcement.
Sure.
Just for members of the public that are on Zoom, they can also watch it on the city website without having to log in. They can view it that way as well. So they could just go to the city website to the meeting at hand, and they can watch the live video via there that way as well.
Great. Thanks for that information. So we're accessible in lots of different ways. So at this time, Mary, can you please call roll?
Yes. Chair Williams?
Present.
Vice Chair Ebnetter?
Present.
Commissioner Nugent?
Here.
And Commissioner Patel is absent.
All right. Well, welcome back to in person. This is very exciting and seems like a long time since we've done this. So, and as you know, there's still options for virtual participation. So there are several ways to participate for tonight's meeting. Those attending in person, there are 3 options to sign up to speak. Number 1, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. Number 2, sign in using the iPad at the back of the room. At the back of the council chambers. Or number 3, scan the QR code to sign up. The code is located on a sign at the back of the chambers.
Excuse me, Chair Williams. We're having a little bit of a video problem, so do you mind pausing for just a moment while we try to figure this out?
Not at all.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Sorry about the bumps.
We'll work it out. You're doing twice the work as you have had to before. You've got in-person and remote and Zoom and, God, we've all learned a lot. All right, talk amongst yourselves.
Getting my steps in today.
They'll tell me when they're ready.
Wait, no, it's not showing up there. Okay, Chair Williams, we can go ahead and actually get started now.
Okay, so where was I? We talked about how to participate or speak if you are here in person. And if you are participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute yourself. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Okay, so at this time, we can move on to the first item on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is, as always, the public comment period. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item that is not appearing on the agenda may address the Planning Commission at this time. State law prevents the Commission from taking action on any matter that is not on the agenda, so your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. The target limit for public comment is 15 minutes. However, additional time for public comment may be provided, or time per speaker may be reduced to allow other members of the opportunity to speak. So at this time, are there any members of the public that would like to speak about something that is not on the agenda? Okay. Then at this time,
One moment, I'm just checking Zoom. There are no general public comments at this time.
I forgot that you have to check both. Sorry. Okay, we can close the public comment period and we can move on to the public hearing. Mary, will you introduce the item, please?
Yes, 1 Hayward Avenue, new 4-story mixed-use building with ground floor office and 18-unit multifamily apartment units, PA 2019-045.
Okay, so I think I should be notifying people of the order of things. That's a little bit different than what we've done before, but the order of this item is staff presentation, and then applicant presentation, and then any clarifying questions from the planning commissioners, and then public comments, and then commission deliberation and action. The applicant's given up to 15 minutes to present, and members of the public are given 2 to 3 minutes to speak, depending on the number of speakers. So at this time, we'll take the staff presentation.
Good evening, Chair Williams and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Wendy Lau, Associate Planner, and I am here tonight to provide the staff presentation for PA 2019-045, a development project at 1 Hayward Avenue. The project before you tonight is for the proposal of an office and residential mixed-use building with 18 apartment units. The project site is located at 1 Hayward Avenue. The site is in the E2-1/R4 overlay zoning district, where both office and high-density residential units are allowed. As you can see on the screen, the project site is located in the southwest corner of El Camino Real and Hayward Avenue and is identified by the yellow arrow. The site is 12,820 square feet, which is equivalent to 0.29 acre. The site is currently occupied by 3 buildings, of which there are 5 units for residential use and 1 unit of 1,115 square feet for office use. The applicant has noted that one of the rental units has been vacant since the time of the planning application submittal. The project site is located adjacent to a 2-story dental office to the north, a 4-story residential building for Sunrise Senior Living to the south across Hayward Avenue, a 3-story multifamily residential building in the R5 zoning district directly to the east, and St. Matthew's Catholic School to the west across El Camino Real. The proposal consists of the redevelopment of the 3 existing buildings into a 4-story mixed-use building. The building height would be approximately 42 feet and 8 inches tall. This exceeds the allowable height limit of 40 feet and is allowed through the state density bonus law. The building would total 25,320 square feet for a floor area ratio of 1.98, which is within the allowable floor area ratio of 2.0, or gross floor area of 25,640 square feet. The proposal includes 4,495 square feet of office on the ground floor and 18 residential units on levels 2 through 4. Of the 18 units, 2 will be below market rate units dedicated to the very low income levels. All 18 units would be 1-bedroom units, of which 2 would be junior 1-bedroom units and 16 would be standard 1-bedroom units. The units would range from 640 square feet to 935 square feet in size. The proposal also includes an underground parking garage, which would consist of 22 parking spaces. 9 would be dedicated to residents, and 13 would be available to office employees, which is allowed through the state density bonus law. In addition, with the removal of the 2 existing driveways along El Camino Real, the capacity for street parking will be increased. The project proposes to remove all 6 existing trees on site. The 6 trees, including 5 protected trees, have a diameter of 6 inches or more and require a permit for removal. The applicant will replace the tree removals through the planting of 2 new Japanese maple trees and payment of in lieu fees. The project includes 3,260 square feet of open space at grade, which includes a variety of shrubs and grasses and various planters. The project also includes 2,550 square feet of usable open space for outdoor living or recreation purposes, of which 900 square feet is through private balconies and 1,650 square feet is shared common areas and includes patio furniture and community tables with seating. The project will provide 23 bicycle parking spaces, where 19 secured spaces would be for long-term parking and 4 would be available for short-term visitors. Because this project proposes 16% very low-income rental units, the project does qualify for the state density bonus. After utilizing a density bonus concession to apply a smaller lot width, the project site is allowed a density of 44 dwelling units per acre, which is equivalent to 12 units on this 0.29 acre site. With the allowable 50% density bonus, the project site is actually allowed to have a density of up to 66 dwelling units per acre, which is equivalent to 19 units for this project site. As noted earlier, 2 of the units will be below market rate units at the very low income level, which is 50% of the area median income. The project also qualifies to use the state density bonus parking standard, which allows a reduced residential parking ratio of 0.5 spaces per unit. The applicant is dedicating 9 parking spaces to the residential units, which is in conformance with the state law. The state density bonus law also allows the applicant to make 3 concession requests, and the applicant has 1. The applicant is requesting to reduce the landscape buffer requirements to 10 feet along the street and interior side lot lines and 8 feet on the 2nd through 4th levels, rather than providing a buffer equal to 1/2 the height of the building, which would be 21 feet 4 inches. The applicant has not utilized the remaining 2 density bonus concessions as allowed. The applicant is requesting 6 waivers from development standards regarding lot width, building height, and parking requirements. The first waiver is to reduce the parcel width requirement from the standard requirement of 80 feet wide to 70 feet wide, which applies to parcels of at least 10,000 square feet. The site is 12,820 square feet, so exceeds the minimum lot size requirement, and is now able to achieve a base density of 12 units, or 44 dwelling units per acre. The second waiver request is to increase the building height from 40 feet maximum to 42 feet 8 inches. The third waiver request is to reduce the ground floor height requirement for offices from a minimum of 15 feet to 14 feet. The fourth waiver request is to increase the allowable percentage of compact parking stalls from a maximum of 30% to 59%. This results in compact parking spaces for both the residential and office uses. The fifth waiver request is to increase the maximum slope of the driveway ramp from 18% to 20%. The Public Works Department has reviewed this request and has determined that safety is not a concern. The last waiver request is to reduce the office parking requirements from 1 space for each 335 square feet of office to 1 space for each 360 square feet of office. This results in 13 office parking spaces instead of 14. The project will be dedicating 2 units, or 16% of the base density, as affordable to the very low income level. This exceeds the city's requirement to provide either 15% of the proposed units to the very low income level, or alternatively to provide 10% of the proposed units to the very low income level. The project could potentially be required to dedicate an additional replacement unit in order to meet the state's requirements to replace the loss of affordable rental units, which will be confirmed during the building permit stage. The project will not be providing an affordable housing commercial linkage fee. This project proposes 4,495 square feet of office, and the commercial linkage fee applies to non-residential construction of over 5,000 square feet. A transportation impact assessment was prepared to analyze the proposed project's transportation impacts in accordance with the standards of CEQA and the city's general plan. The TIA concluded that the project would result in a net increase in number of vehicle trips by 12 during the weekday AM peak hour and by 15 during the PM peak hour. The TIA also determined that there would be a new increase in the vehicle miles traveled when compared to existing uses, and this exceeds the city's standard. However, these impacts would be reduced to a less than significant level through project design and incorporated conditions of approval, including a transportation demand management plan. A transportation demand management plan was prepared for the project with the aim of encouraging the use of sustainable forms of transportation and in turn reduce VMTs, greenhouse gas emissions, and noise pollution. The TDM strategies include unbundled parking where the cost of renting an apartment is separate from the cost of parking spot, new resident and employee packets, bike share, and on-site TDM coordinator, TDM communications through a webpage, bulletin board, and social media, institutionalization of the TDM program through the apartment lease, and multimodal wayfinding signage. These strategies will be required for the project through a condition of approval. City staff has completed public noticing for tonight's meeting in accordance with the government code and city noticing requirements, including noticing neighbors within 1,000 feet of the project site and neighbors on the interested parties list. City staff has received 2 public comments as of date. The list of concerns include the proposed use, the removal of the trees, and an inquiry regarding a study session prior to the public hearing. Staff has responded to neighbors prior to tonight's meeting. Staff has analyzed the project and recommends the Planning Commission determine the project qualifies for a categorical exemption from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act based on the findings for approval and as conditioned in Attachment 1, and adopt a resolution approving a site plan and architectural review and site development planning application for the construction of a new mixed-use building with ground floor office uses and 18 multifamily residential apartment units located at 1 Hayward Avenue. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available to answer any questions the commission may have. The applicant is also here tonight to present their project and answer questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. At this time, I think rather than questions from the commissioners, I think we would want to see if the applicant would like to make a presentation.
Good evening, Chair Williams, commissioners, city staff. Nice to see you in person. My name is Narse Talo. I'm the project applicant and the developer. Also with the development team, we've got Evan Sokolowski from Arctech, and virtually we've got Lisa Ring with LOR Planning and Consulting. We're excited to present to you today a project we've been working on for a couple of years at 1 Hayward Avenue. So a little bit about us. I'm with Meridian Investment Management, and we're a local company here headquartered in Redwood City. We were founded in 1997, and we specialize in real estate and private investments. From the genesis of this project, our intention has been to develop and manage the project for the long term. And this is our first project in San Mateo, and hopefully not our last, and we're excited about the opportunity to develop this project. I think it's important to talk a little bit about why we think this project is important. As we all know, we're facing unprecedented headwinds here in the Bay Area in terms of housing. And to really alleviate this housing crisis, we need more housing units, and that's exactly what this project delivers. We're proud of the fact that we're bringing 18 units, 2 of which will be below market rate units, and we truly believe every unit counts. In addition, this project provides housing adjacent to existing downtown amenities, including mass transit. It provides for transportation demand measures to reduce vehicle trips and promote alternative transportation modes, such as bicycling, train use, bus, and walking within the downtown core. It's a housing project focused with a small commercial component, which provides a ground floor interface along El Camino. We believe it improves the pedestrian experience along El Camino by widening the sidewalks, improving the streetscape with amenities, and also including a small plaza on the corner of Hayward Avenue and El Camino Real. In addition, we believe the project enhances the Hayward Avenue gateway into the existing neighborhood and also into the downtown San Mateo core, particularly from Highway 92 and sort of South El Camino. And lastly, we believe the project enhances both pedestrian and vehicular safety on El Camino by removing 2 large curb cuts that are currently there and also widening the sidewalks. So to look at a little bit of the neighborhood context, and this will help touch on the point I made about the transportation in my last slide. The project site is equidistant to 2 train stations, Caltrain stations, both the downtown station and the Hayward station. It's roughly a 0.8-mile walk or a 5-minute bike ride. Just a block north is, it's a little hard to see, but there's a little yellow dot just north of the site. That's the 9th Avenue bus stop. And another half a block up is the beautiful Central Park. And then on 5th Avenue, we've got another bus stop, which is roughly a 0.3-mile walk, and also the downtown core. This is the zoomed in bird's eye view of the project site. In terms of existing conditions, so we've mentioned the site is at the corner of El Camino Real and Hayward Avenue. Site area is roughly 0.29 acres. And the current use is 3 2-story buildings, both with commercial and residential uses as allowed per the zoning code. And now I'd like to pass it over to Evan, who is going to discuss the project history, the proposed project, and then some of the architectural features that we're proposing.
Evan Sokolowski with Architect. Chair Williams, Commissioners, it's very good to be here tonight. Thank you for your time. We are very excited about this project. As we all know, it's been a long time in coming. We actually had our community meeting back in 2019, and with some of the challenges with COVID, as well as going through all of the studies, we're happy to be here tonight. We work closely with staff and listening to their comments, as well as comments from the design review and Canon Design Group, and worked hard to respond to those comments as we developed the project. It's evolved quite a bit since we first brought it up, and we think the changes have improved the project to what you see today. We listened, hearing for additional screening that we were looking for from the adjacent condominiums, and we've developed that with the use of some landscaping, which you'll see in the renderings. We added details, including the balcony rails, to provide screening and varied materials on the project. We also took care in where we positioned our windows. We understand the needs of the privacy of our neighbors and the condo. All of our primary views out from the apartments are towards Hayward or El Camino, so we were very conscious of that. We carefully looked at the massing of the project, pushed the building towards El Camino, creating as much of a buffer as we could along to our neighbors in the condominiums, creating that open space buffer at the back. On the east-northeast side, also, we focused and created just our access corridor there on the residential side. We did it as open air, carefully locating any openings in windows so they weren't being lined up to the adjacent apartments and condominiums. A lot of this was already covered by Wendy in her presentation, so just going through this quickly. We are excited. It is a residential focused project. The office component is small. It's focused on the 18 units. The office does provide interaction on the ground floor at El Camino. So we think it's really positive to El Camino itself. As well, talking about the parking, we do have the 9 spaces for the residential, and those are all secured. We're also looking to provide the office parking as shared parking after hours on weekends to the public, so we feel that is also a nice amenity. Going to the site plan, just to highlight some of the things you can see between the Hayward Park condominiums and our proposed project, we have the shared courtyard, which addresses our open space, that also creates a landscape buffer, which you see some of the larger trees that Wendy mentioned, as well as the row of trees that you will see in one of the renderings. The dashed line kind of highlights where our building steps back further on the upper levels for the residential. So while the ground floor is a little bit steeper, we're stepped back with only that open air corridor on that. Our open space on the ground level is secured. Those areas are secured by gates, only accessed by the residents, so that we'll keep the general public out and create that space very secure, both for our residents as well as residents of the condominiums as our neighbors. And we feel the project also really does a good job of improving El Camino Real. Not only does it take out those curb cuts, as Narcisse mentioned, we have wider streets, we have a nicely landscaped street along there with pedestrian scale amenities and lighting and canopies that run along. And you can see the pedestrian plaza that was highlighted at the corner of Hayward and El Camino. This just highlights the below-grade parking, the secured residential at the back and the commercial at the front with access back up to the grade level. The office is located on grade with access out onto El Camino, the ramp coming down with the lobby with our access up to the residential units above, and then 2 through 4, as noted, are all of our apartments, which comprise of the 18 units. You can see highlighted is the open air corridor on the back side, and you'll see on some of the renderings, we've also added screening on that to vary it and provide additional privacy towards our neighbors to the east. Additional upper level units, again, just kind of copying up and highlighting those 18 units across. This is our view from the corner from El Camino and Hayward. We've, again, worked with staff and comments on addressing the massing, the articulation, varied materials, including stucco, cementitious board in a horizontal cladding at the units, the glass down at the grade level. The actual corner highlights and allows views into our vertical circulation, which also helps you understand the building and visually create some interest on that. Just again, kind of highlighting the pedestrian scale. You can see the nice plantings along that and the open plaza, as well as some of the varied materials on this and the detailing and work we went through with staff. We wanted to show this slide as some of the evolution. It shows kind of our view to the neighbors as well. You can see the open air corridor there with the screening that we have, creating some additional blockage. But what we really wanted to do is, in listening to our neighbors, as we further developed this, when we initially had our meeting, we were looking at utilizing a bamboo as our screening, and we heard a lot of feedback on that, and we looked at changing that planting to something, as you see, more of a shrubby pine, which allows us some verticality, but also gets us some dense blockage and screening between the building and our neighbors. So we thought that provided a nice accent there. It is a nice plant that works with the city's plant scheme and low water usage, but it also creates some nice buffer there. And we are With that, we'd like to open it up to questions, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to see if there's any questions from the planning commissioners to help clarify anything. Adam, do you have anything?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Through the chair, I was not on the planning commission when this was in the preliminary review, and so I apologize if this is rehashing anything. But I'm curious what the causes were for not including street trees along El Camino. Was that a design choice, or is that a requirement from the state? Because it's a state-owned road.
Thank you for the question. It actually had to do with the conflicts with all of the utilities running along El Camino and that property, and that was something we worked on with staff as we went through the process, and the state and the El Camino Real frontage.
Okay, so it was a conflict with the utilities. Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, if I may clarify one thing.
Yes.
So this particular project was not subject to a preliminary application, and so did not go through a study session before the commission.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, because I don't remember seeing it either. So, Commissioner Abnetter, do you have any comments or questions, I should say?
No questions now.
Okay. Actually, my question was kind of similar. That happens. In that I was wondering, I probably know the answer. There are trees being removed, and I did not see them as I reviewed the packet. I don't know if I missed them. I'm assuming because the nature of the existing buildings, they're kind of scattered around. It's not like they're street trees currently. Is that the case? Okay. Thank you.
Actually, just further clarification on that, Commissioner. So what you said is correct, and also 4 of the trees, I believe, are in poor form, and the other 2 are in fair form, but in poor locations, so damaging the foundations of the existing buildings. So just wanted to add that as a further point of clarification.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I had not seen where those were.
So through the chair, I will ask one brief question. On sheet A0.01, elevations 3 and 4 have similar views, yet it looks like they're not the same. I'm curious. There's in 3, it shows gates along Hayward coming out of the outside patio, but I don't see that same view on 4. And I just want to confirm that which one is correct, unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
Sorry, can you repeat which page number
It's
you're referring?
page A0.01, elevation 3 and elevation 4. They're stacked. So I don't know if I'm misreading the drawing or the rendering. I think 3 is correct. You've got gates coming out, those wooden gates.
Here is the gate,
He's doing laser.
Yeah.
and then the gate on 4 is right here.
Okay.
So,
I'm reading
yeah,
that
that's our
differently.
secured access point
Yeah.
that we were talking about. So that does occur, and that's what is the access back into the secured open space at the back.
Okay. I thought it was pivoted, and it just doesn't look the same. So that's fine. I was just reading it incorrectly. Thank you.
No problem.
And that's it.
Okay, thank you. I guess next time. Okay, so at this time, we can go ahead and open it for public comment. So this is where you really get to earn your keep, right? Like, see how you can manage the Zoom and the people in person. So I don't know if you know how many speakers that you have lined up.
So I'll just give it a second. I know that we have two in-person public speakers, and at this point, we have 2 via Zoom. We'll just give it one more second, Margaret, and
Okay.
Chair Williams.
I can't find my notes where we were, what the order is, if we're doing in-person first.
Yes, Chair Williams, we will go in person first, we'll go to Zoom, and then we'll go and make sure that there's no other speakers in person, and then go back to Zoom.
Okay.
So at this point, we have 2 in person and 3 via Zoom. What would you like the timer to be for this?
You said 2 and 3? I mean,
So it's 5 total
yeah,
at
I
this point?
think up to 3 minutes is fine.
Okay, so our first speaker is in person. It's Clifford McVeigh. Clifford, you can step up to the microphone.
Hi there. Like they said, my name is Clifford McVeigh. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm one of the neighbors in the condos, as they call them, and there's 20 units there, plenty of parking for our units, and this is too big a project for too little of a space. That's why there's 6 exemptions, 5 trees that are protected being taken down because of 2 low-income units that are going to be put in there, and with no margins. We're not having proper space between our building and their building. I bought my condo 15 years ago there. Beautiful view of the San Mateo Hills, which I'm going to lose, and those trees that they're putting up between our units are not going to be tall enough to protect my privacy through my windows on the 3rd floor. The exemptions that they have talked about, one, we were told originally that there would be a study session. That never occurred, so they're starting to, they have exemptions for everything. Oh, there was this and there was that, and we can't do this, and we're getting our exemptions. Development plans, we've got 18 units with 9 parking spaces, so yeah, it's great to think that everyone will walk to the bus station and take the train, but the reality is that there'll be 18 cars with only 9 spaces, and there's not enough space on Hayward Avenue as it is. There's no parking for the people who have multiple cars, and taking away 2 driveways that come in off El Camino is not worth, and those are going to turn into parking spaces, 2 spaces, but there's still not even enough parking along El Camino there, especially in the morning when St. Matt's kids are being dropped off between 7:30 and 8 o'clock in the morning. So we've been kind of told there'll be things that are happening and they're not happening, okay? The trees have never been taken care of. They've never watered them. No wonder they're in bad shape. They've cut down 2 of them. Any excuse they get to kill a tree, they will, all right? And this is our neighborhood as well, and we're losing our views, and it's great that they're not having windows on the back, but that doesn't help, you know, my view. These restrictions, again, that they're getting exemptions for is, again, to allow too big of a unit on too small of a piece of property. And in my opinion, I don't think that that's the way it should go. All right. Thank you for your time, and that's the gavel.
Thank you.
Chair Williams, the next speaker in person is Ann Tin Ho. Ann, you can step up to the microphone.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here to share our comments. So this is the comments we actually gather from the neighbors, and then it's basically in 3 major areas. Number 1 is traffic, like my neighbor just mentioned. It's a very busy street, and if you've ever been to the Hayward Avenue, you will notice an exceptionally large separation island in middle, and always full parking in the street that allows only 1 car pass. If you look at the records, there's 2 ambulances actually being called, or 3 in the last months. If the underground garage is not functioning, or anyone like parking illegally with this new development, is basically blocked the entire street connect with El Camino. It's actually a risk for the neighborhood. What about fire trucks? What about ambulance? There's really no way for us to get out if it got stuck. This new development is literally connect with El Camino within the whole street. So that's the first concern. My neighbor mentioned about the limited parking. So if you did a Google map from the building to the closest San Mateo train station, it's 1 mile and 17 to 20 minutes walking. in reality, I don't know how many people actually take that walk. So we do expect people will take multiple cars and then drive to this unit, and that's just further increase the concern of the potential risk of the blocking the street. The second one is the community. We talk about adding additional units, 18 units, but it's 16 one-bedroom and 2 single-bedroom. If you look at the current rental units there are families living there. We're not against development, but we want more for the families instead of bring in one bedroom is for young professional working in tech. I just think that's not what the city is for and not what the neighborhood is for. This is a very family-oriented neighborhood. We would love to see more rooms for kids, for senior people, like what we have there today. I think another thing is about the height. Then that's what we shared originally in the first neighborhood hearing or neighborhood meeting. It's I think it's a half floor higher than our current unit. I think that there's a lot of units around there which is higher than other units, but usually they are side by side. But this development is literally facing or blocking 9 units in our building, their main entrance. So we're not just talking about room, but literally is like not just view, is literally the way they get out their house, their main window. We're talking about sun, we're talking about privacy, we're talking about what if it's a block in the air or anything. It's just their main entrance of 9 families. And lastly, construction. The neighborhood has a lot of senior residents, a lot of children. I'm expecting one. So I actually do want to know how we make sure the living quality will be controlled and maintained during the construction. Another thing is there's a PG&E gas pipe under Hayward Avenue. Literally recently just finished a pretty big construction. I remember what happened in San Bruno in 2010. And I just wanted to make sure that study will be analysis because it's a risk, a very real risk if we don't be careful. So thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comments.
So the next speaker is via Zoom. Richard, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I like the design of the building. I think they've checked all the boxes. I think it should be approved. I just recently walked precincts in that neighborhood and parked every time I was there on Hayward, and there was always plenty of parking spaces, and even on the weekend, which is usually the time when parking spaces are limited. I understand individuals' desire for a view, but in this city or in the state of California, there's no right to a view, especially when we can house people. Hayward has, along there has, I think, 3 large condominium buildings already there. To add another one, I don't think is going to be detrimental to the community. But I understand the issues the neighbors have, and I might have some of those issues if I lived there too. But it still doesn't override the need for housing in this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Ryan Motashimi. Ryan, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for your time and consideration of this project. I would in general agree with Mr. Hedges' comments prior. I would say that as someone who would love to live in San Mateo and is trying to, save up to be able to afford to live somewhere, renting or otherwise, that single bedroom units are valuable to me. And if I can't find a place to afford to live here, I will have to go to another city, which some people might think is okay, but it means that eventually down the road when I do want to have a family, that it might be harder for me to move my family in here and bring that, valued community that multiple commenters had previously commented on. So I just did want to speak to a value of all types of housing, including single bedroom, although I definitely agree with the commenters that, multi-bedroom housing is incredibly valuable as well. So I don't want to discount that. In terms of transportation, I'm personally working to campaign to improve bike facilities on Palm Avenue, which is very close to this project location. We know that El Camino isn't the safest place to bike on, for example. It sees thousands of cars a day, which dwarfs the volume of a potential 18 cars a day that, might be parking in and around the project site, or multiply that by a couple of factors if you're considering multiple trips per person. And that's even assuming a 1-to-1 parking ratio per unit, which I don't think is true given the transit-oriented location. And I think that while it might be a pleasant 17 to 20-minute walk to the Caltrain station, which I would always do, it's a 5-minute bike to the San Mateo or Hayward Park Caltrain stations. So this is a very bikeable, flat distance in generally great weather that I think will really encourage bicycling to get around, especially to access all the businesses that are close by. So I think also, for those reasons, I definitely would be supportive of this project. In terms of the parking situation or the transportation demand plan, I think that it's interesting that it recommends unbundled parking and bike share. And I'm just curious as to what extent the items included in the recommended transportation demand management plan would be implemented and how. Because it would be very interesting to consider bike share and unbundled parking policies. And I'd also recommend just parking cash out if unbundled parking is not implemented. So I do certainly hope for the developer to continue their commitment to a robust transportation demand management program to really increase that mode shift to transit and biking and to move our city in a more sustainable direction. Thank you. I support the project.
Thank you for your comments. We'll have the next speaker.
The next speaker is George. George, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, good evening. First, I'd like to say that I agree with the comments that were not solicited by developers regarding the one dimensionality of the building with only having 1 bedrooms and the lack of parking relative to the size of the building and the number of residences. But I also have a question specifically on the utilities right of way. Has the Planning Commission independently verified that there in fact are utilities running under the walkway in front of that building that prevent trees from being planted? I find it a little bit difficult to believe that an avenue as wide as El Camino would not have utilities running under there as opposed to the sidewalks. I guess anything is possible considering the management tour de force that PG&E is, but I'm wondering if there has been an independent verification of that, because obviously it would be very nice to have some trees planted there. And if in fact it turns out that trees in fact cannot be planted there because utilities were stupidly placed there by our wonderful utility companies, then maybe we can consider trees in planters along El Camino. They won't be as big, but they'll still provide some nice offset from the rest of the build, from the appearance of the rest of the building. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
So we have another in-person speaker, Darlene Kirsch. You can go ahead and step up to the microphone.
Thank you. I just want to say a few things. First of all, the parking situation is horrible. So many times when I'm having company, they may have to park 2 blocks away. There's a parking situation that is just, that really concerns me. The fact that there's going to be additional 18 units and only 9 parking places, it's going to make it a lot worse. Also, I'm concerned about the fact that we're talking about affordable housing, and yet you're eliminating the people that are living there with affordable housing, and you're going to only have 2 units to replace this. And then I also see the building right next to me always has vacancies. Now, what they pay is quite a bit more. If we want to have more housing, we should have something like a lot more affordable units and not just big high-rises. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, do we have any other speakers?
There are no other speakers at this time.
Okay. So at this time, I'll close the public comment period, and we'll bring it back to the commission for our comments. We can also make note of, at this time, if we've had any communications with the applicant, just for the purposes of disclosure. I think I was supposed to do that earlier. So who would like to start? Either of you?
Through the chair, I have a couple of questions for staff and the applicant. Can you pull up the conditions of approval, please? And I think I want to look at page 13. No, 9 of 13. Item number 21 is talking about the storm drain, and I've never seen this conditions of approval, although it may have been in other packets, yet this one caught my eye. So the hydrology report demonstrating no increase on the flow of a 10-year storm, 6-hour duration at 90% capacity with the city's rainfall intensity curve, and showing that the 10-year flow HGL within the city pipe and 100-year flow below the street curb elevation. So what does that mean? And is this a standard conditions of approval for all multifamily developments?
I'm sorry, can you clarify which condition you are referring to?
I think you said it was item 21.
No, it was item number 21, and
Okay, is it that? Location and full screening?
No. On page 9 of 13, I hope I'm in the right project.
Yeah, maybe once we find it.
Yeah, I may.
It doesn't seem to be the same document.
Okay, then let's skip that.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I have one question for staff, and could you explain in more detail what HAA means to a residential project and what that means, the input that the city can have to make adjustments or deny a multifamily unit?
Certainly, through the chair, Manira Sandhir, Planning Manager. So the Housing Accountability Act applies to projects that are proposing residential, that applies to residential projects, and what the HAA requires is that only objective standards can be applied to such projects.
So that means that all of the concessions and waivers that the applicant has asked for are approved through the HAA.
They are approved through the density bonus statute, Commissioner Ebenetter. So the density bonus requirements also apply to this project when a certain percentage of affordable units are proposed. In this instance, they're proposing one concession, and they are allowed up to 3 concessions based on the number of affordable units. And the density bonus law also allows for unlimited waivers, and I believe there requesting, is it 6 or 7? Yeah, a number of waivers. And again, those can only be denied if there is a public health and safety finding that, those particular waivers or the concession would lead to a public health safety impact. And this project has been reviewed by the building division, and staff did not find any public health safety issues associated with the granting of the waivers.
Perfect, thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, just to add on to that, so that is the standard for being able to deny a concession under the density bonus law. In other words, there's very limited discretion to deny concession under the density bonus law. But similarly, under the Housing Accountability Act, once a project falls within that act, if it's a housing development, or it could be a mixed-use project that's 2/3 housing, which is the case here, then as long as the project complies with objective standards, then the project cannot be denied or reduced in density unless there's a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, or it would violate state or federal law. And there's sort of one other component as well. So to your question, once a project qualifies under the Housing Accountability Act, there's very limited discretion to deny or reduce its density.
Okay, and there are 5 existing residential units currently there. So can you explain to me, a multifamily building is 10 units or more, correct? I believe it's 10 units or more.
We're just checking the definition in the zoning ordinance.
Through the chair, is this with regard to the Housing Accountability Act, or is it just what the definition is of a multifamily building from a building
No,
code?
what I need a little bit of clarification on is those 5 units that are being demolished, why aren't they replaced above and beyond the minimum?
So the conditions of approval do speak to the requirement to replace housing units that are being demolished under the density bonus law, not the Housing Accountability Act. And perhaps the project planner or others can speak to the details of that, but there is a replacement requirement under the density bonus law.
But have we replaced those 5 units? Because we're adding 10, but 5 were there.
Yes, according to state law, my understanding, Commissioner Ebenetter, is that it counts those units as replacement units in terms of the total number of units that are being built. So it's not additive, that you have to have the 5 units as the base requirement and then add on the remaining units. It can be double counted towards the housing proposal.
Okay, so the city of San Mateo adheres to a no net loss housing component, correct? And so how does that tie into this conversation, or does it?
I would have to look into that a little bit more.
I mean,
if you'd
I
give
can
me a
see
minute.
I can see this coming up again. I'm just trying to understand the math, how it works. And if we should really be starting with 15 units instead of 10 to get the bonus. But if you're telling me that state law, you don't have to replace those 5 units, they're part of the base number, then that's fine. It just seems odd that that's how the math works.
That is my understanding, that is how the math works, that the state law does allow for the layering of those units.
All right.
So the replacement units are counted towards the base density of that housing
Okay, beautiful.
proposal.
I have, so there's one other question that may be part of this discussion, and it's got to do with AB 686, the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. So I understand that every project that is handled by, that is related to housing and community development needs to be vetted through the lens of the AFFH. And I would assume that this would just naturally affirmatively further fair housing based on the low-cost housing that's being provided. Does that seem logical? that it would fall in line with affirmatively furthering fair housing, because there are 2 low-cost housing units that are being provided.
So the affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement is being explored in the new housing element, Commissioner Ebenetter, and at this point, the city does not have a program in place to require certain characteristics be included in the program. Of course, the city does have inclusionary requirements. We have a BMR program that requires that 15% of any project be subject to inclusionary requirements.
Okay.
And those are certainly being met by this project.
Okay, great. I do have one question or suggest or ask of the applicant at this time, and I see that you are using 25,320 square feet, and you have a maximum volume that you could use of 25,640 square feet, which is a great equation because most developers do not maximize their capacities, and you almost have. And we're getting 18 dwelling units, and you could actually go up to 19 dwelling units. I would like to ask the applicant if they would consider adding the 19th dwelling unit and dedicating it to people with disabilities. I don't expect an answer this evening. I know you're going to go through more work with staff, but I would like to see that be part of the conversation.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. Yeah, we can certainly look into that.
Yeah, you'd only need to find 420 more feet to get to 640. So you might be able to find those in those other 18 units. It'd be great, a great amenity for the community if you're able to do that.
We can certainly look into it.
Thank you. Those are my questions for now. Margaret?
Do you want to go ahead and provide us with your comments, or?
Sure. Do we have an agenda or a list of comments that you want us to address, or do we just, okay, I think the project's fantastic. I totally understand the neighborhood's concerns with the building, yet at this point, the necessity for more housing in San Mateo is of highest concern to keep our city in line with a variety of state laws, and also, more importantly, to address our own housing shortage. I don't see a public safety issue with this project. I do see that there's definitely going to be some parking issues, which are very common, unfortunately, in a built environment. I don't like the idea that the building will be impeding views and sunshine, which seems as if it's a deterrent for a lot of locations. Yet again, the city does not have the ability to stop a project of this size with this many housing units in it, especially with the very low units, to deny it. I think all of the concessions and the density bonus waivers are appropriate for this building. And I like the architectural design. I'm glad to see there aren't any trees that are being positioned in line of sight for travelers coming out of Hayward, the Hayward Street, getting onto the El Camino Real. I would like to see the applicants consider one other thing, and I don't know if it will be manageable, but if you could possibly use your office parking as residential at night. I don't see why that wouldn't be manageable.
Thank you. Yes, that's a great point. So the TDM report that was mentioned in one of the comments identifies the included measures that we've already committed to, and We certainly will have shared parking on evenings and weekends between the two uses. So extra residential parking, possibly for visitors and residents, they can use those commercial spaces. So that will certainly be a part of the project.
Yeah, I saw an allusion to shared parking, just wasn't sure if it was, the thought of using it for residents was part of that equation.
Yes.
So that'd be great. I think it's a nice addition. I think it'll work well in the area, and unfortunately, it does have impacts on the immediate buildings, which I'm sympathetic to. But all in all, I'm in favor of approving this project. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Commissioner, Adam, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, I'll go next. I do want to just note to some commenters this evening that, just to clarify, that the Housing Accountability Act does not allow the city to diminish the number of units within a residential project without, significant cause. And so there isn't really likely going to be a push from the commission to do that. And it is important that we have more housing within the city. I do want to look to the future, where as we devise our codes with the general plan and such and beyond, to create more effective ways of encouraging multi-bedroom units without disincentivizing the building of more housing, because it's very true that what commenters said, that we need more multi-bedroom units within the city in addition to one bedrooms. We're getting a lot of one bedrooms and studio apartments, which have their place for certain types of family units, but it should in the future be balanced with larger types of housing. The things that I want to talk about are some of the things that we can potentially adjust to make this a better project. And it's primarily just some minor things about the landscape. I have looked at the landscape plan, and I do share the concerns of community members that the proposed trees used for screening between the adjacent condo building and this project will likely not become large enough to be significant screening. I would recommend changing that tree to a different species of Podocarpus. Right now it is Podocarpus macrophyllus mackie, which is a good tree, but it's not going to grow as tall as Podocarpus gracilius, which is very much more common within San Mateo as a tree. And also, I would ask that the applicant consider the raised planters in which these screening plants are proposed to have soil contact with the ground so that the trees can have a larger root span and larger root system than what the planters alone would provide, because it does look like that they're not placed on structure. And so I think providing screening between the buildings is very important in mitigating some concerns. And I'd like to see, making the best decisions without, disrupting the project. The other thing that I wanted to note is the concern I have for the experience along El Camino. There are no street trees proposed, and I do like the suggestion of a commenter of exploring raised planters for trees as a buffer for pedestrians. There is this would likely be in the right of way, so I'm not sure if that is possible, but this is something that could potentially provide much more of a sense of safety to pedestrians, because El Camino is characterized by pretty high speeds of cars driving down, and just giving some sort of, physical thing between the cars and the sidewalk is very calming for a pedestrian, and trees would potentially give some shade, and the greenery is always pleasant. So I'm not sure how we would move forward with that. I might ask staff if that could be a condition of approval. I understand that there would be potential for not working out with utilities or the state of California owning that right of way. So I'm just looking to staff to see what our possibilities are for that. If we were to add that as condition of approval pending the ability to do so with the state of California Department of Transportation. Yeah.
There would be discretion employed for imposing a landscaping condition. I would recommend that perhaps the applicant can weigh in if they're amenable to that change.
Sure.
And certainly then that can be added.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the suggestion. So we're certainly open to exploring both of those, both the tree species and also the raised planters, if it works with Caltrans and obviously with the utility issues. But we're certainly open to exploring that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are my only comments. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I have a few comments, and I want to say thank you to the staff and the applicant and to the members of the public, because I always learn a lot, as I always say. Oops. What I have been looking for is the data sheet. Getting used to this setup instead of my Zoom situation at home. Thank you. What I was looking for was the setback along El Camino. And, are you at the setback? Is the project at the setback on El Camino currently? It is. Okay. Thank you.
Let me see. The zoning code requires a setback of 7 feet and 5 inches along any street frontages. So that would be along Hayward Avenue and of Camino Real. And the applicant is proposing 9 feet along Hayward Avenue and 10 feet on the ground floor along 9 feet along Hayward Avenue to the garage and balcony walls, and 10 feet along El Camino Real.
Okay, so it's not right to the setback. The building is not right to the setback. Is that correct? Did you say 7 feet setback on El Camino?
Correct.
And the building is actually...
The minimum required is 7 feet 6 inches along Hayward Avenue.
Oh, Hayward. Okay, sorry. Can I have your... So what is the minimum on El Camino?
On El Camino, it's actually half the building height, which would be 21 feet 4 inches.
Okay. Okay, so they're within the... So they're already closer.
If I could speak, the 21 feet is actually the backside. That's what we were getting the concession on. As noted, we have widened the sidewalks as through discussion with the city along El Camino, so we have a slightly exceeded the setback there, but minimally.
So you exceeded the setback on El Camino. Okay, and then when you said widen the sidewalk, you didn't go into the right of way, of course.
No,
Okay.
it pulled our building back.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so what I'm leading to is that it's nice to have a wider sidewalk along El Camino, but I think I would err on pushing the building as close to the setback as possible, or at least closer, I guess. And err on providing maybe more space to the neighboring condos. There are shade and, sunlight and daylight concerns that, that I think, the daylight study shows. I think the trees are a nice buffer. I do like the idea that instead of bamboo, there's some good tree choices. So I like that change. That doesn't help with, that provides shade and, affects the sunlight into units, but it does provide privacy. So there is this trade-off that you're getting anyway. So in my opinion, I think another reasonable trade-off would be to minimize your setbacks on El Camino. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm clarifying on the plans. There is a 10-foot setback on El Camino, which we are at the minimum. We do have a couple of points where the building sets back, which exceeds it, but the main facade is at the 10-foot minimum.
That's what I actually thought, yeah, but I couldn't quickly find it again while I was looking, and I hadn't noted it. Okay, well, I think that, that is one of my concerns. That public area that is being created for the building is nice, but, I guess you would actually be increasing it, I guess, if the building was reduced in size or any of the units were smaller. But bottom line is that is one of my main concerns. I feel like the distance to the neighboring building is creates privacy concerns and daylight and sunlight concerns. I do realize, though, that one of the concessions is, 2.5 feet extra in height. I'm sure that 2.5 feet is important due to the structure and the roofing and the parapets and, all of these things that add up. And I do understand that I don't have any ability to deny that constraint. So I just want to say that I think that, height and distance to the neighbors are a concern. So given that I can't do too much about that, I'll keep going. The other item I think we kind of talked about a little bit was parking. I think that the option of using the parking nights and weekends for the tenants or the people, the residents that live there, is critical because, half a parking space for per unit is really great if everybody really didn't have cars, but the reality is we do. So I hope that that's a feasible option. Let's see, I talked about the height. I also liked the comment that someone made about one-bedroom units, and I hadn't really thought about it too much in terms of community, but it does create a lot of singles, and nothing against single people, but with a variety of household types, you do get a little bit more of a variety of a community. So I think that's something to consider. Two one-bedroom units could be combined and create a larger unit. Even if it was just for a couple of scenarios, I think it's worth considering. Then I made a few notes about the design review comments. I always appreciate Canon Design Group's comments. I think they have usually, oftentimes in agreement with them. I generally like the building as well. I think it could be a nice addition to the El Camino experience and to that corner. I know those little buildings well. I walk in that area, and they're sort of cute little houses as they are, and some of them I think are commercial spaces actually. So they're kind of an interesting variety of spaces. But I think this would be a nice addition to the streetscape. I liked a couple of the comments that were made, though, that lighter colors rather than dark, heavy colors would be preferred. I think that was Larry Cannon's one of the comments. What else? I guess that was the main thing. Oh, it was a little unusual to have the open corridor on the side. I guess I've kind of come around to that idea. At first, when I read the comments from the design review, I wasn't sure. I had to kind of get my head around that. But anyway, I think that could work out. I see there's some windows in some of the units on that side, but for the most part, they're entries, and it's not, probably not, there's not a lot of units that have the windows there, so. Okay, I was kind of all over the place, but I mean, generally, I think it could be a nice addition to the El Camino experience, and I hope it will be a good addition to the Hayward Avenue experience as well, given that it will have an effect on the next door neighbors. And with that, I guess I need to ask for a motion at this point.
Through the chair, I would be happy to make the motion if I've got a document to read from.
Oh, do we have a slide, Wendy, that shows the kind of the ask or the recommendations?
There it is. So the recommendation is both items, correct? Determine the project qualifies and adopt a resolution.
And
That is correct.
Okay.
I guess I would have a question. Can we add items such as, or are they just part of the notes and conditions that, for instance, the change to the different tree species, does that have to be part of the motion?
Maybe staff can clarify that, if that's possible.
Yes, through the chair, certainly that's something that the commission, the maker of the motion can propose as part of their motion. I have some condition language drafted if the majority of the commission wants to go in that direction. I believe the applicant has already weighed in and confirmed that they would be amenable to that change. And if once I read the condition, perhaps you could also ask for confirmation again from the applicant.
Ask for confirmation before we do the motion? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if you like, I can read what we have drafted as staff based on Commissioner Nugent's comments, and then perhaps seek that.
Sure, that would be helpful.
So the new condition could be added that says the landscaping plans shall include the tree species.
It's Podocarpus gracilior. It's also called Afrocarpus. So it goes by two different scientific names. So
Afrocarpus.
gracilior. Yeah, I can help you spell it later.
to the east for increased privacy, and the applicant shall work with staff to include planters along the El Camino Real frontage for additional landscaping if it meets state requirements and does not conflict with any utilities.
Additionally, are we able to make it a condition of approval that the office parking can be utilized by residents during certain
Certainly.
hours?
That's included in the TDM plan, but it's not a condition of approval, like it's not a mandate. So certainly if the applicants are amenable to that, or Wendy, go ahead, do you have more to share?
To clarify, a shared parking program is not part of the TDM plan. There was a bike share program, but that's separate.
So that could also be part of the motion, provided the applicant agrees to that condition.
Both of those are okay with us. I would just note on the first condition, it would obviously be subject to Caltrans approval. So maybe we can include that in the condition. But I will defer to staff on that.
I think that was, but we can just double check, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, but the public comment period has been closed for this project. Well, they're answering specific questions for us. Okay, so at this point, can you make a motion, Commissioner Ednetter, based on all that?
I can. So I'd like to make a motion to determine the project qualifies for a categorical exemption from further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, based on the findings for approval and as conditioned in the attachment 1, and adopt a resolution approving the site plan and architectural review and site development planning application for the construction of a new mixed-use building with ground floor office uses and 18 multifamily residential apartment units located at 1 Hayward Avenue. Additionally,
There would be 2 conditions of approval added, one specific to the landscaping condition that I'd read into the record, subject to Caltrans approval, and then a second condition that requires that the the office parking be available to the residents as shared parking.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I will second that motion.
All right, Mary, will you take a roll call vote for us, please?
Yes, Chair Williams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ebnetter,
yes.
Commissioner Nugent,
Yes.
and Commissioner Patel is absent.
Okay, at this point, the project is approved based on that motion. Thank you. That project is closed.
I would like to note through the chair that the action of the Planning Commission can be appealed to the City Council by any member of the public.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure if everyone heard that, but at this time, we have a request for a 5-minute break. Was I supposed to use my gavel?
Like being in a court.
Yes, I did. So then you should try. Is it time?
I think it is. You can get, yeah, maybe once we change.
Okay, I think it's been about 5 minutes, so let's find our seats. I saw you do this, and I'm like, I have to use my gavel? Oh, no. Oh, I didn't hear that previously. Oh, yeah, I was getting a lot of visuals, though. Okay. All right, I'll wait for Mary to come back. Oh, that's right, we're switching. Okay. No problem. So are we ready to get started then? Great. All right, so for the next item on the agenda, can you go ahead and introduce the next item? Let me just make sure. Are we ready, Julia and Mary? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and introduce the next item.
So item number 2 is a pre-application for a proposed 4-story mixed-use office and commercial building at 3157 South B Street, PA 2021-82.
All right, thank you. Can we have the staff presentation?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Julia Klein, Principal Planner, and I'm here to discuss the project that's located at 31-57 South B Street. It's a pre-application, planning application number 2021-082. The information that you have before you, and I apologize for the edge of the presentation slide, but this is information that's included in the staff packet. The project site approximate parcel is 0.37 acres. It is one parcel with multiple buildings on it. The current zoning is C1-2 with the R5 residential overlay. The zoning designation is intended to promote mixed-use development. Current uses on the project site include restaurants, and there's a vacant commercial tenant space. And surrounding uses include a mix of retail, restaurants, services at the ground floor, offices, and residential above, as well as the downtown Caltrain station, public garages, police substation, and those are all within the nearby streets on B Street and First Avenue and Baldwin. The slide before you is a summary of the project information, which is included in the packet. First is a proposed zoning reclassification to change the zoning from C1-2. There's a typo that should be at R5 to CBD. And with that zoning change would be an increase in maximum FAR from a 2.0 as the base FAR to a maximum of 3.0 as the new base for CBD. The proposed development includes 4 stories. It's mixed-use commercial and office. The proposed FAR is approximately 2.54, and the total floor area is about 41,000 square feet, with a mix of retail and office use spaces. Additionally, the proposal includes ground-level plaza or open space, totaling approximately 400 square feet. The project does not include on-site parking, and the loading is proposed to be along the shared driveway or alley, which is, if you can see my cursor, it's along this portion of the property, accessible from First Avenue. On a very high level, the proposed reclassification, the project includes the reclassification as well as the proposed development. The reclassification itself would require a planning commission review during the formal planning application, and then a recommendation to City Council, with the City Council making the final determination on that. And then the proposed development itself is subject to the site plan and architectural review for the new building and site improvements, as well as site development planning application for tree removal. On the right column, you'll note the applicable codes and policies. These are all included in the planning application attachments, so I won't read them. On a very high level, I wanted to point out a few conformance issues for the Commission's discussion and consideration. One is the reclassification. Additionally, there's the project design, both the building site design. There's also parking and loading zone, as well as the proposed changes to the right-of-way. And we'll go into further detail on those in subsequent slides. So the first consideration is the zoning reclassification. And to begin with, I'd like to mention the zoning reclassification findings that would need to be made in order to recommend support for the reclassification. And so this is included in the packet. The two findings are the proposed amendment is in conformance with goals, policies, and objectives of the general plan. And the second one is that the proposed amendment would not be detrimental to public health, interest, safety, convenience, or general welfare of the city. In summary, there are differences in terms of the current land use map, which is part of the general plan. As you note, the project site is located here, and the current land use designation is pink, which is the downtown retail core. And in the zoning map, this is actually red, and it goes along with the C1-2 with the residential overlay. And so there is a slight difference in between the two designations. Additionally, within the downtown plan, the project site is located in the downtown retail core sub-area. The sub-area is generally the central portion of downtown, and the project site is located here. The North B Street area, where the zoning is currently C1, is part of this portion of the sub-area. And so that's the North B Street, Tilton Avenue sub-area. One other difference to note is that the North B Street area that's noted in the downtown plan generally does not include the required retail frontage, so it does not extend all the way out to North B Street here. But with the zoning change, the project site would then be subject to the required retail frontage zone and ground floor open space requirements, and those are noted in the data sheet that's included in the attachments. I apologize for this going outside of the border, but I wanted to highlight real quickly that there are some differences as noted in the data sheet. The FAR in the current designation is 2.0 versus 3.0 with the proposed reclassification. Additionally, with the proposed reclassification, there are setback and build-to-line requirements, open space requirements, and then required retail frontage requirements. Those are all mentioned in the data sheet. Additionally, the project site is located in an area of high archaeological sensitivity, and the buildings are over 50 years old, so it would be subject to a historic evaluation during the formal planning application. The project at this stage is conceptual in nature. A lot of the details are not required to be provided, and so with more information that will be provided in the formal application, staff will provide a more detailed analysis and verify project consistency. So at this point, one of the questions regarding the reclassification is for the Commission to consider if they have any comments or thoughts regarding the reclassification. The second group of discussion is tied into the design, and that includes the building, the site design, as well as the right-of-way changes. On a high level, there are SPAR findings, as well as site development planning application findings for the tree removal. These are pulled from the staff report, so I will not read them. Again, information that's included in the project plans that are in the staff report packet. This is the corner elevation showing B Street on this side and First Avenue on this side. B Street elevation is on the left drawing, and then this is along First Avenue showing where the alley is located. And then these are close-up information for the proposed building. The office entrance, again, B Street, and this is the corner plaza area, as well as the second level gathering spaces. These elevations are included in the packet, as well as the proposed materials. There's a range of different materials that are proposed for the building. And in regards to the design guidelines, the project site is located in the downtown area that is subject to the downtown retail core design guidelines. I've quoted a section of our guideline which talks about that these guidelines represent minimum criteria for acceptable development. There's a list of different design criteria categories, A through K. Staff is seeking commission input regarding these. Some or all of them, it's up to the commission, as well as any other design considerations such as the blank wall or the materials or any other thoughts that the commission may have. These are excerpts from the design guidelines. I've included here just for the commission's discussion if it's needed to reference. But again, these are included in the packet. And so I won't go into detailed discussion, but they're here in case the commission would like to refer to them during discussion. Again, just a repeat of the questions that we are asking the commission to weigh in on regarding the design. The first one is tied into the design guidelines, and then the second one is tied into if there's any other design consideration the commission would like to impart. Regarding the site plan and public right-of-way, what you'll note is the project site currently has 2 buildings on site as well as a shared driveway that's accessible between these 2 buildings, and then a shared alley that's 20 feet wide, which provides back-of-house access to businesses on these adjacent properties. The proposed project is proposing to build to the property line on B Street and First Avenue, and then extend a wider sidewalk onto B Street as well as First Avenue, and then maintain the shared driveway. However, there's details that are shown in the plans regarding blocking a portion of it for no parking. These are here. These are also included in the project plans, and it provides a little bit more close-up detail regarding the proposed site plan. Also included in the packet is a section of the pedestrian master plan, which the project currently doesn't quite align with. The master plan envisions 11 to 15 feet sidewalk. And the proposed project on B Street proposes 16 to 22 feet and approximately 8 to 24 feet on First Avenue. The project proposal would expand into the current on-street parking area and travel lane. Additionally, there is a 2020 adopted bike master plan. There is a current bike lane project that's in design. This is a city project. And that's on First Avenue. As you'll note in the map, there's different colors for the different bike facilities. Along B Street, there's also as noted in the bike master plan, a future separated bike lane. There's going to be a council study session, I believe next Monday, May 16th, to talk about the future of B Street and the different uses in the public right-of-way. So again, a city council on May 16th. And as noted in the staff report, there is a conflict with the sidewalk, with the proposed sidewalk expansion that's proposed to be expanded into the public right-of-way. So for the commission's consideration are 2 questions regarding the right-of-way. And the first one is, should the proposed sidewalk width be 11 to 15 feet as envisioned in the pedestrian master plan, or should the sidewalk be wider? if the sidewalk is desired to be wider, should that additional width be created through the public right-of-way or, on private property or a combination of both? Again, just a reminder, the council will be weighing in on this subject as well next Monday. What's included in the application submittal, the agenda packet, is a summary of the neighborhood meeting, as well as comments received from the community post-packet production. And so generally the comments have to do with the building design, the height, the size, the materials, the alley, the use of the alley as a potential extension of Main Street, comments on the right-of-way changes and the proposed uses, parking, and then construction noise. I'm not sure if you can read this, but this was intended to be a summary of all of the questions for easy reference, and so I will not read them. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Maybe you should leave that long list up. So, yeah, at this time, I wanted to know if there's any commissioner questions for clarification before, because there's a lot here, and then we could see if there's a applicant has a presentation as well. Okay, so do either of you have any clarifying questions at this time?
I'd rather hear the presentation from the applicant.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
I'd rather wait until after the presentation.
Okay, so let's go ahead and have the applicant do their presentation now. Welcome. I think you could probably go ahead and get started. Or are you waiting for your presentation? That would be helpful, I'm sure.
Give us 1 minute.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
But I'm ready. Hit the clicker.
So much technology. By the way, I think you guys are doing awesome for the first time back in person and Zoom. And yeah, round of applause for you guys. It's a lot.
Yeah, I might be able to have one of the key fobs. It's gonna have my notes on it. Is that? Yeah, that's the. I might have a fob that might do the trick.
Give us a few minutes. There's a technical issue. Thank you.
That's fine, no problem.
I'm sorry? Do you want me to try it? All right, we'll go old school. We'll do it. Okay.
Okay, we figured out a workaround. We can resume.
Okay, welcome. Go right ahead with your presentation.
Great. Well, thank you, Planning Commission Chair and Commissioners, for giving us the opportunity to present our project tonight. First and B, my name is Preston O'Connell. I'm with Harvest Properties, and I'm joined by our design team. If you go to the next page. A couple of things we want to do today is talk a little bit about what we've heard today. We've always really tried and do a lot of community engagement long before we submit a project, and we try to do a lot of deep listening to the general plan workshops, other major projects to really inform our thinking. One of the things we'll touch on next is our approach to the public realm. How will folks interact with this project on a day-to-day basis, and how can we kind of help elevate the community that surrounds us? Then we'll touch quickly on the project and the zoning clarification. If we go to the next slide. As I mentioned, our design team is here tonight, both digitally and in person, to help answer questions. Our architect is RMW, who's here in person, and Place is our landscape architect that's here online. Both of them have strong experience working in San Mateo, so they really do understand a lot of the community considerations, and also have really focused on how we create these great community spaces. If we go to the next slide. So really this presentation and discussion is a starting point of a longer dialogue. And it's about how we shape this project to really meet the community needs and goals. And so what we try to do is, in our research, go through and look at what are some of the major goals within the community that we've heard to see if we have that right as a starting point. And then we try to then address that within our project. And so I won't go through all of them, but some of the key considerations that we've heard is within our particular neighborhood, how do we elevate the retail environment and corridor and really energize the pedestrian experience? Obviously, affordable housing, the jobs housing imbalance is a critical issue within our community, and how can we contribute towards that solution? Trying to do development where development should be, near transit, which will help mitigate traffic impacts, noise pollution, and some of those other considerations, all while trying to weave that into the established neighborhood fabric. As I mentioned before, what we've heard is how do we really elevate the public realm experience on B Street? And so we put a lot of thought and energy into that while respecting the historic neighborhood that's there with some of the height and density considerations. So I'm sure we didn't all get it perfect, but those are some of the things we really try to do as part of our listening and research and address that within the project. I think what's important, oh, sorry, go to the next slide. Thanks. What's important that we wanted to note is we are truly long-term holders and stakeholders in the downtown. We have multiple projects on the B Street corridor, as you can see here. And so we really share an aligned interest with the city and community in getting it right. Really, our goal is to design timeless projects that will serve both the business and residential community. So while we're here tonight to talk specifically about First and B, which is our smallest project, but one of our most important projects because it is the gateway into the downtown, being right next to the Caltrain, what we want to know is through this collection of projects that we're putting forward, we're really trying to solve some of the major public policies that we know are important to the city and community through those various proposals. So if we go to the next slide, we wanted to create kind of a guiding mission and design guidelines. And so we went back through the general plan, we went back through the specific plan, we went back through our research with neighbors, and really tried to outline some of those core goals, which you see showcased there on the right. This area has been ever evolving with the pedestrian mall closure between First and Third, and the permanent parklet program. And I think the environment is really changing along B Street in a very exciting way. And so this starts to create kind of a mood board of what we've talked to some of the community stakeholders about. So what is the vision for our project? Well, one of the things we like to do is really get into the site's history and express that in a new way. Oh, sorry, if you could click to the next slide. Thank you so much. So this site for the last 120 years has served a variety of uses. It actually started back as a grocer or crockery that has been a venue for locally curated goods. And so we thought it'd be fun at the ground plane to see if we could bring those elements back into the project. And some of the ideas that were thrown around was maybe having a farm-to-table restaurant that was joined by maybe a specialty grocer that had a deli and a butcher, or maybe they had a cheesemonger, wine and beer purveyor that could be flanked by a coffee shop and a flower shop or an ice cream store, really creating a variety of uses where the community could come as a destination, as a gathering point, and really have it be welcoming. And so as part of that, what we're really excited to explore is the opportunity to have one of the first mass timber projects in the peninsula, which is basically a building that's built almost entirely out of wood, which I'll get into more later, but it is a very renewable and sustainable building material. If you could click to the next slide. Thanks, Julia. So you'll hear me use this term public realm a lot. And really, in our mind, that's the interface between the pedestrian sidewalk, the bike lane, and the parking area, which creates this interactive zone where people want to visit and be engaged on a daily basis. And so we feel like a project successfully integrates in with that public realm area and support one another. We want to make sure that we're getting your feedback, obviously, on this to see if we're headed in the right direction. But we think with some modifications to the B Street corridor, we could start to evolve it to some of the images that you see here on the screen, effectively trying to create our own version of Burlingame Avenue that's true to our history and our identity. But we've really spent a lot of time to research what makes a great retail street great. And so I'll get more into that in a second. If you click to the next slide, thank you. So one of the big challenges that we face in trying to achieve that goal is that right now, and you can see this in the upper right image, our current sidewalk is only about 8 to 10 feet wide. It doesn't really leave a big enough canvas to work from to create that pedestrian experience. So the good news is there's, I think, a few ways that we can tweak that won't compromise the vehicular experience, the parking experience, as well as the biking experience, because we really want all of those elements to work together in harmony and not have it be a zero-sum game. So in terms of the pedestrian experience, one of the things, if you could click to the next slide, thank you so much, is we need the critical mass of the canvas to create this area. And really for the pedestrian sidewalk, it's broken into 3 zones. There's the pedestrian walk-through zone, there's the furnishing zone, and then there's a landscaping zone to beautify the street. And you simply can't do all of those things in 10 feet. And so you really need about 16 feet to accomplish that goal. And you can see that in the image on the upper right versus the image on the lower right. And we really think that on B Street, the opportunity to do that is in the public realm. And the reason for that is the street has a north-south orientation. And so we want to get as much natural sunlight into those spaces to make those retail environment as warm and comfortable as possible. The other thing that's really important is this is an historic corridor that we flank. And so most of those historic properties are built right up to the property line. And that's actually what is asked for in the general plan. And it's actually, and when we worked with our retail consultants around the country of what makes these great retail corridors, is you really want the buildings right up against there so people can really experience what those small businesses and other shops have to offer. And so one of the things we saw as a big challenge is if we were to carve back into our property, it would create this kind of cavernous condition, which you do actually see in the lower right image, but also it would be very inconsistent with the datum of the historic buildings, which I don't think are probably going anywhere, as you go down B Street. So we wanted to create a consistent framework, not only for our project, but because we have a vested interest in the B Street corridor being successful, having that continuity as you go down the block and other properties are redeveloped. If you could click to the next slide. Thank you. So what do we do? Well, the upper right image is where we're trying to head, which I think creates that really great retail experience with the pedestrian zone. The challenge of getting there is right now there's a bike highway that is proposed down B Street. And that was studied back in 2019 before COVID, before the pedestrian mall closure, before the parklet program. And so there's a lot of facts that have evolved since then that create a lot of tension between the biking experience on a separated bike lane, which you see in the lower right image, and where B Street's evolved to. And that's not good for the pedestrian, which you can imagine if you're parking on the outside of that bike lane, and let's say you're elderly or if you have young kids and you're trying to get up and down those curbs and you have bikes on this bike highway that are going 15, 20 miles an hour, that's a big safety conflict. And we think that it's not only uncomfortable for the pedestrian, but it's also really dangerous for the biker. So it doesn't work for either stakeholder. It also would really impact, we think, the ability to kind of keep elevating the retail environment down B Street. So I know this is being talked about next Monday in City Council, and we really feel like having that re-looked at with a fresh set of eyes with the information that's changed, I think the goals of the master plan for the bike master plan can be met by having either that artery move to another street where there could be a separated bike lane where there isn't the retail conflicts, or because relative traffic on B Street, especially with that mall closure, is pretty slow, it's not uncommon for those bike lanes to be shared with the travel lane of the vehicle. And so with either one of those modifications, we would have a travel lane that is functional, we would maintain the parking that's there, we could have a vibrant streetscape, and also be able to make sure that the bicyclists have what they need. Really the goal is people want to bike to B Street to get off their bike and experience the retail opportunities that are there. And that's our goal. If we could shift to the next slide. So let's talk about our project specifically. This is the gateway into the downtown. And we want to make sure that it's engaging the community on all sides. And for this reason, we think it's vital to design the public sidewalks and public spaces to allow for a variety of retail experiences that cater to both locals and visitors alike. And so right now, as you come off of Caltrain, one of the big challenges is you stare at a big concrete wall. And we thought it would be great to maybe take down a component of this concrete wall to really open up the corner, which is what you see in blue there, and create some activity and energy on that corner that really could draw people in off of First Street into the downtown, into the B Street corridor. As you wrap around that corner, we've really carved pretty significantly for a site of this size back in to create this public plaza, which you see in yellow. And that can create a great destination and gathering point in the community that could have public art, could have great landscaping, and be a great beacon and anchor point for this section of B Street that would continue all the way to the north along B. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. So here is some kind of fun representative imagery that you could start to envision as you would come around off of the Caltrain with great outdoor public seating, a generous pedestrian walkway, as I mentioned, maybe that opportunity for public art and really sensory landscaping that could be integrated as part of that. So again, these are just ideas that we would want to sculpt with you in the community, but really from our research and meeting with a lot of people in the community, this feels like the right direction that people would really like to see the B Street corridor head in. So actually, thanks, yeah. Heading up from the ground plane into the building, what we really want to do is create this series of cascading elevated rooftop decks with very lush and well-programmed landscaping to really have that relate to the ground plane. The existing building there has these very strong linear lines, and we did want to echo that in the new building. So there was some consistency there. And then we've really focused on recessing the upper story buildings back so that it feels very approachable. If you could go to the next slide. The goal is that we want to make this building feel intimate, small scale, and in line with the historical architecture that surrounds the buildings to the north and south. And so you can see the framework of those historic buildings where there's really this very established two-story condition that's on B Street. If you could flip to the next slide, thanks so much. And so you can see how we've tried to do that, where we designed a historic representation of that along B Street with our two-story condition that's nested behind it with a more modern building that's highlighting this mass timber, which is a really beautiful design element, but having that more historical framework that fronts it. Go to the next project, or next slide, thank you. So this is a great overall shot of what you could hopefully imagine yourself coming off of Caltrain, maybe coming to get a coffee, coming to get breakfast, maybe on your way back from work, coming to shop at maybe the specialty store, hanging out with friends in the plaza. And we really wanted to elevate the materiality in the public right-of-way to really showcase what could be done and to really kind of help support the retail efforts that are in the area. If you could, yeah, thanks. Switch to the next slide. This gives you kind of a tighter shot of what that public plaza could start to look like with again, some of that landscaping, which we can make very sensory, some public seating elements, and really providing the infrastructure that maybe the future retailers could really leverage to create some unique experiences for the community. Let's go to the next slide. Again, this is creating the right framework for the sidewalk to really allow those businesses to be successful and create that energy and buzz I think we're all looking for. Flip to the next one. Again, another zoomed out shot. I think what we're trying to do is in the materiality of the building and the storefronts, really echo that historical area that really surrounds us through the brick and timber that's in the building. Also create a consistent framework for the retail frontages and allow those retailers to customize that space and really break up the building to make it feel smaller scale. Flip to the next slide. Thank you. So one thing I'll just quickly touch on is wellness and sustainability are super important to us. We're gonna be striving for LEED Gold. We're hopefully gonna achieve carbon neutral. What this really means is we're trying to leverage our Mediterranean climate to reduce energy loads in our building. While doing that, if you could flip to the next slide, while using as sustainable building technologies as you can. And so we're really pushing our teams to do that. And here you'll see that we're really excited to explore the opportunity of mass timber. Just as a quick data point, a building of this size in mass timber would take about 325 cars off the road each year compared to a pier building that was made out of steel or concrete. It's a very renewable source of materials, but I think what for me is really fun to work with here is it's the first building that I've ever toured where you actually want to go up and touch it, feel it, smell it. It's a very warm, welcoming material that we think would be a great addition into the downtown. So I'll conclude here. Thanks, if you can flip to the next slide. We're talking about a little bit of the zoning clarification and cleanup. So when we were actually acquiring the property, we worked with the current city staff to look at this inconsistency. And the feedback we got from staff at that time is, yeah, this appeared to be a technical error. And so we acquired the property based on that correspondence. And that really helped formulate our business plan for this project. And if you go back, and we went back actually with the current staff and re-looked at what was the intent within the general plan and downtown area plan. And really, it's very consistent in its narrative of saying that the neighborhood commercial is really supposed to live north of Baldwin and that the retail downtown core should be south of Baldwin, which is where our project site is located. And all of the design guidelines reflect that. Most of the maps and figures reflect that. There's only one map that's frankly inconsistent, and that is the zoning map where it looks like there was just this error where someone didn't follow Baldwin and they just actually jogged around the corner. So
I just want to remind you, we have a 15-minute limit.
Oh, sorry, I'll be basically done. So, okay. So anyways, we've really focused on being consistent with the design of the buildings that surround us and in our proposal. So in conclusion, if you could flip to the next slide, I'd say the last thing I wanted to touch on was affordable housing and housing in general. And so this project, we're doing commercial and retail because we really think that solves some of the other important policy goals for the city in this area. The challenge for the site is it's really small and it can't be everything. And so we really like to be great at a few targeted items, which is what I mentioned before. Per the city's formula, it would only generate about 2.4 units of affordable housing for the commercial that's being proposed here. That would frankly be kind of lost in the project and it wouldn't have all the infrastructure and resources that would really support that. And so what we'd like to do is work collaboratively with the city and staff on other public-private partnerships like what we're doing elsewhere in our portfolio to generate frankly more units somewhere else in a project that's purpose-built. And we think that's a better solution. So thank you for giving us the time to present tonight and look forward to your questions.
All right, thank you for your presentation. So do my fellow commissioners have questions at this time for kind of clarifications? And then I will open it up to public comment.
Through the chair, I do have some questions.
Sure, go right ahead.
And this is me trying to trace kind of what's going on with the zoning. and I want to know, and this might be a question for staff, would there be any plausible scenario in which the city would be obligated to grant a zoning change for the project? In other words, is this change fully at the discretion of the city, or is there something that we should know?
Through the chair, I would take a first stab at responding. So any rezoning amendment or zoning reclassification request is subject to city council approval, and it is at the discretion of the city council. My understanding is that a zoning reclassification would have to be consistent with the general plan, just because there is that requirement for vertical consistency between planning documents. However, it would be at the discretion of the city council.
Thank you. And then my next question is, can staff confirm the land use designation that the city council recommended for that site for the general plan update?
Sure. I'll go ahead and answer that. So it is included in the general plan update alternative C, which has a designation of mixed use high. And that's at 8+ stories with a maximum dwelling unit sort of range between 100 to 200 dwelling units per acre.
Okay, thank you. And then this is a question, I want to just be sure that I got it. Under current zoning, what is the maximum number of affordable units that could feasibly proposed on that site? Based on density and in site size, if it were a market rate project subject to our inclusionary program?
I can also take that one.
Thank you.
So under the current zoning designation, which is the C1, the maximum density would be 50 units per acre. And then in terms of feasibility, that's a little bit harder for staff to be able to provide a response to. Typically, the feasibility and actual build costs are provided by the applicant.
Mm-hmm. And then my next question is, roughly how many units of affordable housing could be produced using the estimated commercial linkage fee, given typical funding conditions for affordable housing projects?
I'll go ahead and answer that as well. I'll take a first stab, and then maybe Manira can supplement. Based on what staff is aware of, it varies, and so I think there's different factors and different, the city's portion of the commercial linkage fee can be used to leverage other funding sources, but it varies from project to project and depending on the types of projects that you do. So I think, it's variable, and so there's not a range that we can provide you. I think the idea here is the project is as a non-residential project, subject to the commercial linkage fee. That fee goes into a pot, and the city council decides, which projects to fund using that pot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And through the chair, if I could add to that. So again, as Julia mentioned, it varies from project to project, depends on how much other funding sources can be utilized to develop affordable housing projects. So typically, it's not just one source that the city uses. We try to leverage the funds that we receive through the commercial linkage fee and use other sources to supplement that. Julia, I don't know if you have the number that currently what the commercial linkage fee would be due if this office project was to go forward, but perhaps we could, if we could pull up that dollar amount, or if you remember that would be a good number to share.
I don't have that available, but we can provide it after the meeting.
I thought I read it was in the documents, right? 950,000?
At least 925 or 950.
Yeah, I had noted 9, yeah, anyway, either 925 or 950,000.
I think you're about right. Yeah. And then the question I had is, are the dimensions of the proposed sidewalk designs in the landscape plan provided in the project plans? And I couldn't find dimensions in that, but I saw it in the presentation. And then along with that is, what is the vehicular travel lane width proposed in that proposed design for the street? Does anybody know what that would be?
We don't have those dimensions in the plans that were submitted for the pre-application. In terms of the estimated sidewalk widths, and it's staff's estimate, and that was included in the presentation. So it's approximately 10 feet sidewalk width as the existing condition on First Avenue. And I think on B Street, it was estimated to be about 8 feet.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
I would like to point out that we also have Public Works staff available on Zoom if there are questions related to right-of-way widths and improvements. Sue Ellen Atkinson from Public Works staff is on Zoom if perhaps she would like to address that comment.
That's good to know.
Yeah, would it be
Hi.
possible? Oh, hi.
Sure, hi. I'm getting the hang of the hybrid environment. I'm sorry. Sue Ellen Atkinson, Principal Transportation Planner with Public Works. So as Julia mentioned, the dimensions were not provided on the plans, so staff did have to estimate. The measured dimensions for the sidewalk appear to be approximately 16 feet to 22 feet wide on the B Street frontage, and that's inclusive of areas where there's proposed curb extensions, and up to 24 feet wide. That is a very large photo. On First Avenue, where the curb extensions are proposed. Again, the vehicle travel lane width is not provided on the plans. The current travel lane width is actually fairly wide on B Street at 17 foot. While the dimensions for the travel lane haven't been provided on the plans, the widened sidewalk does propose to encroach into the public right-of-way quite a bit. So that would narrow the travel lane quite significantly.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting some Star Trek vibes right now, but thank you very much. Those are all the questions I had.
And she's gone. All right. Do you have any questions, John?
Chair, yes, I do. I'd like to go back to the zoning change and understand what's at stake here. So currently, we've got a 0.37 acre site that's zoned C12 R5, which means it requires commercial on the ground floor or not?
Based on the zoning, the zoning code of C1, it does not have that ground floor require retail frontage requirement. However, it is noted in the downtown plan that it is that segment of B Street has that layer. And so in terms of the SPAR findings, it would require the city to be able to if the project moves forward without the zoning change, the project would need to have conformance with the zoning code as well as the downtown plan. And so the second finding for the downtown plan, if the project did not have retail on the ground floor, it would not be able to make the findings to support it because of inconsistency with the downtown plan.
Okay, so does the CBD have ground floor retail? And is there any possibility of having residential in a CBD zoning classification?
Yes, to the first question, under the CBD designation, required retail is a requirement in the zoning code as well as the downtown plan. And under CBD, residential units are permitted up to 50 units per acre as density. 50 units per acre, correct.
So the only thing I see that we're trying to do here with the zoning change is to increase the FAR for the commercial side from 2.0 to 2.5 or 2.54, whatever it is. Yeah, 2.54.
Correct.
Okay. And there has been statements made in the presentation that this change of zoning had been discussed numerous times with city staff and that the applicant had been given assurance that this zoning would be granted, the zoning change. Is that current statement? Is there something backing that up, or is that just an understanding by the applicant?
Through the chair, I'm happy to address that one. That may be a misunderstanding by the applicant, because typically a rezoning request has to go to the city council for approval, and staff would not presume to make a statement saying that this would be approved, because it's not up to staff's discretion to make that approval.
Okay. So how would this zoning change meld with the general plan vision and zoning of that property for the 2030 GPU, or whatever date it is?
Our current general plan?
The one that we're working on.
So I'm happy to take this one as well, Julia. Any application that's submitted currently would be subject to the general plan that exists today. I understand that there may be interest in knowing what the future general plan may allow. However, any rezoning or zoning reclassification proposal that comes before the commission or the council would have to be reviewed under the current regulatory framework.
Okay. My question is the statement has been made that this change in this use is in line with the city's vision, and that I'm not asking him if it's something that we can demand, yet does that align with the city's vision for the use of that property?
I had a brief conversation with Zach Dahl, Deputy Director, who's the project manager for the general plan update effort. So the preferred alternative has not gone to council. It's scheduled to go to council in July 18, 2022. And so I don't think we can make that statement, that the current project is in line until we hear from the council on what that preferred alternative is.
Okay. So I'm only saying that because I believe the applicant believes that it does align with the vision. And that might not be melded or worked through with the city council yet, but what is being presented to the city council might not be in line with this proposal.
Through the chair, if I could reiterate, while there may be a vision in the future that may be part of a future general plan update, as I mentioned, the rezoning proposal has to be reviewed in the context of the current general plan and the requirements within the current general plan. Of course, in the future, when a general plan update does come forward, I'm sure that that's something for staff to review if there are properties that either do not conform to that vision, or if there are other zoning amendments that may be needed to conform to that vision, but that's a separate process.
Okay. Yet again, I'm making the statements because that is what the applicant has said, that it aligns with our future general plan. So I just want to clarify that, how I think about this process. It seems that.
Just a reminder, these are questions for
Right,
applications.
right. So this is a question. It seems like it's somewhat difficult for staff, for applicant, for commissioners to understand the processes with B Street prior to it being vetted by the council, which is coming up specifically on the bike ped components, and how it ties directly into this also. So the timing just seems a little difficult to give clear direction to an applicant. So. I see on the, and I don't know if this is pertinent, but on the TRAG site, they had the same existing zoning as this site has. So it's the C1, 2, R5, but as the applicant has said, that is on the other side of Baldwin, correct? So his point that this may have been missed in the mapping where their property actually ended up with the same zoning when maybe it doesn't align with the other neighborhood or the rest of the neighborhood, is that correct?
That sounds like a question for the applicant, is that right?
No, I mean, what they've said is that their zoning, the zoning that this property is currently under should not have this zoning. They should have the exact same zoning as the adjoining properties.
I believe that is what the applicant is saying, yes.
Okay. All right. Does the city acknowledge that that is a valid statement?
I think there are differences, as noted in the presentation, between the land use designation and the zoning code, and there are policy documents that align with retail core. And so there appears to be more policy documents that align with the property being retail core. However, it does not preclude development on the project site. And so the question, before the commission and the council ultimately would be, even if there are differences between the land use designation and the zoning designation, would it still make sense to get those to align? It doesn't have to be, but there are findings that still can be made, even if there are differences.
Okay. All right. Those are my initial questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't know. I think I had some questions, but now I think they've been kind of talked about. Oh, okay. One question I was not clear on is the question of the right-of-way and the sidewalks and such. I know the applicant showed, different scenarios and different communities and different scenarios for B Street, depending on the bike plan or solutions. But I guess what is part of the project? Would that be an entitlement of the project, or any of that, the bulb out and the stuff in the right of way, how much of that would be part of this project?
That's a good question. I think at a minimum, it would be subject to the findings that are in the site plan and architectural review. In most other projects that come before the commission, the projects would have sidewalk changes, and driveway, changes. And so in this particular case, it would encroach further. But at a minimum, like I said, it would be subject to the SPAR. Now, if there's additional planning entitlements that's necessary, we'll have to look into that. But at a minimum, it's the SPAR.
Okay, thanks. That helps. I guess one other question kind of related to that is, does this project has these, cutouts, kind of, I guess, for lack of a better word, that can be utilized for what we saw in the presentation. But does the city support, I guess it's just a question that's evolving with COVID, with this world we're in. Like, does it support tables and, dining on the sidewalk like Burlingame Avenue, or, and again, I guess maybe there's not a solid answer to that because lots of that is changing all the time.
Yes, I can take that one. I believe the city is definitely in support of outdoor dining activities, and specifically along B Street, there is a proposal that the city council approved to do a parklet program, and I look to our director to use the specific terms.
Well, and I guess what I meant was like adjacent to the project on the sidewalk, for instance.
So there is a program for sidewalk dining as well as parklets and the pedestrian mall. So there are
Okay.
several options for outdoor dining, and I think it is a part of the vision for the future of that area.
Yeah, okay. All right, thanks. I think that's all the questions I have for now. So we should probably move on to public comment at this time. Do we have in-person speakers and Zoom questions?
Chair Williams, we do have one in-person speaker, and I'm still waiting on the Zoom. It looks like there's a couple of them right now.
Okay. We can go ahead and get started with the in-person speaker.
Chair Williams, what time do you want to set for the
We
public
can
speakers?
use, you said there's 1 and 3.
Right now, there are 4 on Zoom.
I guess 3 minutes is fine. I think that's what we
3
said for the
minutes,
last
okay.
group. Thank you.
Bill Lieberman can come to the podium and speak.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I came here tonight really to listen and learn rather than to comment, but I did have a couple of questions. Is that appropriate at this time? Or can I frame my questions as comments?
Yes.
Okay, let me do it that way. One of them is I was not sure from the presentation what percent of the floor area of the building would be commercial and what residential. It's a mixed-use building, and I'm assuming those are the two uses that would be involved. The reason I ask is because I lived in such a building in San Francisco before coming here, and it worked out very well. The only challenge was getting a mortgage, because our building was 50% commercial, 50% residential, and we found out that FHA doesn't like buildings that are more than 25% commercial for guaranteeing a mortgage. That rule may have changed, and this may be a non-issue, but it's something that I think probably it's not a city issue, but it's more of the developer's issue. The second question I had was, or the comment I had was, the block face extends north all the way to Transit Center Way. So does that entire block face get expanded if the public right-of-way is used for the widening of the sidewalk? Or is there some kind of transition at the north end of the parcel we're speaking of tonight back to the original sidewalk for the north end of the block? Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, Ashley, who's our next speaker?
Chair Williams, the next speaker is Lori Watanuki on Zoom.
Great. Okay, go right ahead.
Or you can go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Lori Watanuki and would like to add the following comments on building design, loading zone, pedestrian, and bike master plans. There are some beautiful historic buildings surrounding this new project. It would be nice to see a design for all 4 sides of the building that would complement the historic downtown. There will be people walking to and from the transit center from all directions, and there will be passengers on Caltrain passing by who will see the new building. The first 2 or 3 floors incorporate a base of brick from buildings in the historic area, as stated by Harvest in the community meeting and the notes. We would like to see more traditional elements continue to the upper level portions of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th levels, instead of the transition to curtain walls of glass. Somehow the curtain walls of glass conflict with the more traditional elements, and we would like to see the new contemporary development blend in with the transit center building on the east side and the surrounding buildings in the historic district. In regards to the 2 truck loading zones, if the loading zones are on site, this would avoid the conflicts with the existing Samtrans bus stop on First Avenue. It would also be good to follow the current pedestrian bike master plan for consistency in the plans, as well as safety for pedestrians and bicyclists to avoid conflicts. It is important on First and B to have the separated bike lanes. Thank you for listening to our concerns.
Thanks for your comments.
Chair Williams, the next speaker is Richard Hedges. Richard,
Great.
you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. This site brings back a lot of memories when I lived at 2nd and B. The alleyway between the first two buildings on the block was the way that the Greyhound buses came in. That was a Greyhound bus depot. A lot of people that are alive today don't even know what a Greyhound bus was. But I have to agree with Ms. Watanuki's discussion about the design of the building. I think she was right on with having it look more traditional to downtown, farther up. However, I do like the placement of the building. I think it's time for to have a little more housing downtown. But I am disappointed that the developer does not want to put the below market rate units that should be required for that. I'd much rather have 2.4 below market rate units now than some pie in the sky in the future through fees. It does not make sense to me to prolong the time that we get below market rate units. So overall, I like what's being proposed. I think some changes could be made to it, but it sounds to me like we're not sure at all about some of the elements of the building and whether they're approvable. So thank you very much for hearing my comments. I appreciate all the work you guys do. I know it's a tough job.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Chair Williams, the next speaker is Ryan Motashimi. Ryan, you can go ahead and unmute.
Evening again, Commission. Thanks for the opportunity. I do know what Greyhound is, going back to Mr. Hedges' comment, and I do certainly wish there was Greyhound bus service to San Mateo Caltrain at this moment. And I also would like to agree in general with Ms. Watanuki's comments about consistency with the pedestrian and bicycle master plans. So I'll back up for a minute. My first compliments to the developer for trying to activate this street and also cut off a little bit of that wall that separates the alleyway from the Caltrain station to create a public plaza. I think that those are great ideas. I would support and strongly support housing on the site. And, I think that to the extent that the developer can prove that the funds that they pay to a commercial linkage fee will go into near-term development of housing in a transit-oriented fashion, I think that if that isn't the case, that they can show that that would happen in a short-term basis. I think that housing on the site would be preferable to Mr. Hedges' comment. I'm also, so backing up a little bit more, I'm a co-team lead for Move San Mateo, which is a pedestrian and bicycle and transit advocacy group in San Mateo. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the organization, but in general, we do support higher levels of protection for bicycle facilities and also for pedestrians. And to that extent, the bicycle plan here on this block calls for a separation of bicycles from vehicles, and in the developer's proposed preferred roadway alternative, that separation doesn't exist. The separation need not necessarily be achieved with a separated bike lane, and I object to the developer's use of the term bike highway for the separated bike lane. Separated bike lanes are not bike highways. It could be achieved through making that street an entirely pedestrian mall, like the other two blocks of B Street directly to the south. That would achieve separation of vehicles and bicycles by virtue of eliminating vehicles from the street, which would be consistent with the 2 blocks south. So I think that to the extent that the city council does not convey support for a full closure, that instead the street parking, which is about 5 spaces currently fronting the developer's project on B Street, should be converted to widened space. And then the buffer, the separated bike lane with buffer separation should be placed adjacent to that widened sidewalk. We should not be prioritizing parking on the street over safety. Please ask yourselves if you would want your kids or grandkids to bike down that street without separation. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Chair Williams, there's one more speaker on Zoom. The speaker is George Derby. George, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. I did take Greyhound to my freshman year at Cornell University, and don't hold me to this, but I believe that Stevie Nicks' father was president of Greyhound when the family was living over in, I believe, Woodside a few years before she joined Fleetwood Mac. So Greyhound is intertwined into the life of the peninsula. But I just really have one comment, which is I noticed in the architectural renderings that there is kind of raised green space around the building. And I'm wondering if that can be lowered to grade level. I think that it would create a more open feel, and we're really lacking for park space anywhere around the urban core. So, I mean, we'll take whatever we can get, and I think that might be an improvement, more of a maintenance issue, but I think it would be worth it. So, thank you.
Thanks for your comments and that little bit of history. Any other speakers, Ashley?
Chair Williams, there aren't any more speakers.
Okay, great. Thank you to everyone.
Chair Williams, one speaker just popped up.
All right.
So the speaker is Zach B. Zach, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Zach, are you there? Is it press star 6 to unmute? Is that what that is? No, that was, I have to go back to my notes.
Hello?
Hi, now we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah.
Great, go right ahead.
Okay, sorry. My name is Katrina. I'm Zach's fiance. Zach is here by my side. We are residents of San Mateo. We actually live right around the corner from B Street and the proposed project. And I really just have one primary concern, and I'm surprised no one else has mentioned this tonight, which is I'm mainly concerned because the area that is immediately north of this block that is in question is primarily a Hispanic and Latino community and development. As you know, there are a row of maybe 5 or so markets that are all Hispanic owned. And I'm just very concerned with how that community will be integrated into the proposed plan, primarily for the very many reasons of gentrification. It happened in San Francisco. It's happening in lots of other parts of the Bay Area. And we all know that there are sort of downfall concerns should that start to kind of raise issues with people maybe struggling more socioeconomically, should things not necessarily go well for that community, should they not be well integrated into the physical space. And so I just want to pose caution to developers in this particular project to really consider the immediate surroundings, especially those right adjacent to this block in question. And that is all I wanted to say this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for your comments. Okay, if there's no other speakers, we can close the public comment period, and we'll bring it back to the planning commissioners. And I think on this item, this is a study session, so we're not making a motion or voting at this time. So just a reminder. Would one of you like to start? Is there any preference?
So are we now going to look at the list of items that staff
Yeah,
is
that
asking us
page.
to address?
Yes, that would be helpful. So there was sort of 3 areas of concern. One was the rezoning and design, and then the right-of-way issues. We'll give them a couple minutes. Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
So, rezoning class, does the planning rezoning classification?
Did you have a comment?
I'm wondering, can you see this on the screen for you, or
We can see it easily.
Okay. We can go in order, or you can take it out of order, whichever is easier.
Is there more? Okay, I'll come back to the rezoning classification after I've looked at the building design and site plan and the public right-of-way, because it's more of an overarching concern of mine.
Through the chair, I would like to recommend that we take each triangular bullet separately and discuss them, and then, so we're not just having a huge chunk. So like,
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So you wanted to skip over rezoning and, okay, so why don't we, you want to start with which do you want to start with?
I'd like to start with the public right-of-way.
All right, let's do public right-of-way. Each of us can provide our comments on that. And then we'll look at building design and site plan.
Sure.
And provide comments on that, and then look at the rezoning reclassification issue, which really, if it was up to me, I think that would have been first, but because that kind of leads to the next things, but that's okay,
no, I'm going to have to agree with you. I'm sorry to do this.
Well, if this was
a
hearing, I would concur with you. So what I may want to say on the rezoning and reclassification might not leave us an opportunity to even talk about the building design of public right-of-way.
Well,
so that's my concern.
Yeah, so it's sort of like either I mean, I see your point. I don't know.
Go in the order you want.
Let's go with the.
Well, if 2 out of 3 want to go with rezoning, let's go for it.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with you that if we talk about rezoning, then that may mean that there's, the design may be, I don't know, I don't want to say it's moot, but I mean, depending on what we all say, there may be.
But we're not providing a determination. We're just giving
Right.
feedback. And so I think having the feedback up front, what becomes of that will get fleshed out as we talk.
Yeah, okay. So sorry to be wishy-washy, but I think that we should talk about the rezoning first. That is kind of the big issue in front of us. The next item we should still give as much weight to as well, because, as you said, we're not making a determination here, so we still want to provide input on building design and site plan regardless of the other item. And the public right-of-way item, I don't know, let's just do it in this order.
Okay. So in that case, I will defer to Adam to start.
Okay.
So this has, for me, the zoning reclassification has a lot to do with what the proposed use is of the site, and without extracting what the proposed project is, I have no issue with the reclassification. It does seem to conform to the intentions of the current general plan. That being said, this zoning reclassification is at the discretion of the city council, and so that brings me to think about, if I have that leverage, what would I want for this site? And our greatest need right now is to have more housing, and that is going to be to me, the elephant in the room is that this is a commercial building and it provides no housing. And having in lieu fees or commercial fees that go towards our affordable housing funds is extremely important. However, an office building like this is going to create space for quite a number of jobs that will most likely utilize market rate housing. And so what we're doing is we're creating perhaps a further imbalance in the availability of market rate housing as well in building this. However, the other thing that I think about is, it is still important that we have office space and commercial space downtown within walking distance of our train. We want to have the downtown be a live-work type place where people who can live here and work here, or people can take a train to work here and vice versa. It makes for a much better transportation system regionally and locally. And so I'm not necessarily opposed to office building. It's just that this creates a bit of a deficit as far as our housing crisis, which we have a crisis of housing. I know there's huge demand for offices in some respects. Now there's places that offices are building or offices are empty. So it's a stranger market. So that the other aspect of this is, would I want to live right next to the Caltrain station with the train horn? Because even if we have grade separation between the train tracks on all the streets in the downtown, eventually, the train horn will probably still be present at the train station because there's going to be pedestrians walking around there. I believe that is the case at like Millbrae, even though there is no.
In the middle.
Yeah. And so that is going to be a constant nuisance, and there's going to be significantly more trains per hour over time. Now, it's not something that can't be mitigated with, sound insulation and such, but I don't think would ever go away in a residential building. So my mind goes to, well, what would be the highest and best use for this site? Is this ideal for housing to me? Maybe not because of the noise, but it's not great to increase our commercial space without a commensurate increase in new housing at both market rate and subsidized affordable. So those are my thoughts on the zoning reclassification, and I'm happy to open it up to other commissioners.
No problem. Thank you, Adam. Through the chair. The zoning change itself isn't my concern. My concern with this development as it sits in front of us today is, will it exacerbate the pressure on the north central neighborhood to being forced out of their homes through gentrification of this area, and what will that do long-term to families that currently live in North Central? North Central has been designated as the only area technically in our city that is susceptible to displacement at a very high rate. And this was my same concern with TRAGS when they were proposing that. I asked staff, I said, well, how can we measure the effect of this type of a project on that neighborhood? And quite frankly, we can't, because we don't know. But I think we all know intuitively, as these neighborhoods change and as they morph into more expensive and higher end properties, that the natural occurrence of displacement happens. And we do not have the information or the policies in place to protect the most vulnerable. I think that the jobs to housing imbalance that will be exacerbated by continuing to build commercial properties, it's already shown the effects that it has had on real estate prices in our area, which have now gotten to the point where the vast majority of people can't even afford to live here. And I understand that the applicant's concerns or desire to have a commercial property there, yet all I've heard for the last 2 years is how important it is to have high-density housing at our transit hubs. And if we've got a transit hub, it's this main train station. So it's hard for me to think that the best use of this property is yet another office building. There have been other areas of downtown that have been developed, small sites, and they've included a minimal amount of housing almost as a concession to the city that they are trying to accommodate both housing and commercial in a mixed use. And the model isn't perfect, but at least it's acknowledging the effect that commercial development is continuing to have. So I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody that a site like this that is right next to a train station could be very beneficial to the city as a residential component. I concur with Adam. There's a major concern about noise in these properties, especially for residential. But I was thinking as he was talking about it, I live, I don't know, 6 blocks from the train, but my neighborhood extends all the way to abutting the train. They're separated by a 2-lane road. So they've been there for 60 or 70 years, and they're all occupied, and somehow you deal with it. And we have a lot better technology today to alleviate some of that discomfort from a residential unit. So I honestly feel that the best use would be housing, and I am not in support of the project like as it is. The rezoning classification to me only serves one purpose, and that is to take the FAR from 2.0 to 2.54 for commercial side. So I don't see how that's a gain for the city at all. So that's my statements on rezoning.
Through the chair, can I just reply to a couple of things that Commissioner Ebenetter mentioned? So one of the things that you had talked about, Commissioner Ebenetter, is a gentrification in North Central, and that is definitely something that I didn't mention it, but that's definitely something that is important to be cognizant of. This is related to this project, but it's also larger than the project. When we talk about redlining and red line neighborhoods, or neighborhoods that were likely to have been redlined, what that means is that neighborhood was denied federal mortgage insurance, and so investment would not have been common within those neighborhoods, or basically building new buildings or refurbishing new buildings would have been extremely rare, because the residents and property owners would not have had the ability to do such projects with the backing of federal insurance. And so when you have a neighborhood that would have experienced, in a sense, disinvestment due to such constraints, to deny a neighborhood of development now is problematic as well. So we must, as a city, because what it does is it depresses property values. It continues to depress the property values or wealth of the neighborhood, and that is a hard nut to crack, because we want to be able to gain parity within the city between neighborhoods. Increasing property values is not really something that we necessarily want to do when it comes to housing affordability, but having an understanding of what our decisions to not do investment in a certain area of the city has ramifications that we need to be aware of. And I think that a project like this is not particularly a good example of that. I think what we need to do is figure out how we, in the future, avoid displacement and the negative aspects of gentrification while also being able to invest in a neighborhood. This project itself, as a commercial project, will likely raise the value around the site for other development, and how that impacts residents and business owners kind of depends a lot on our policies to prevent displacement. And those policies need to be worked out for us to be more confident in something like this, a project like this going forward. We have another project nearby on Baldwin that is in kind of a similar situation, but it is also a housing project. This one, it's not displacing residencies, but it is displacing businesses. It's a hard line we have to walk as far as investment and non-investing, and we have to be careful with it. Yeah, that's just what I wanted to follow up on that.
Okay, so I have a few comments, and actually I'll just start off with, while you were talking about this issue of displacement and gentrification, I couldn't help but think about the last project that we just saw tonight, where there are, small affordable houses that, are probably people that will be displaced because of that project. So, it is a difficult line that we have to, try to interpret, and, hopefully we're doing the right thing. But my comments on the rezoning reclassification are that I can say I support it. I know housing is important, but I think it's an appropriate project for that location, for that specific location. There's kind of a lot of stuff happening right there, as we talked about, or as we heard about, that I actually don't know that it would be a great place to live. I mean, not just that, I actually live very close to the trains and I'm used to them. They are loud in the middle of the night on a summer night when I have my windows open. So, you know, you get used to it. But the pedestrians and people coming out of bars at 2 a.m. or, you know, the movies at, you know, midnight or whatever it is, you know, walking to the parking garage or just walking, I think the pedestrians and the, you know, the people coming from our vibrant downtown would be, you know, more noise than, you know, almost anything. So, or people going to the coffee shop in the morning. So there's kind of a lot going on there. And I think it would be, I think it would be an acceptable zoning reclassification. I think it's interesting about the difference between the land use map and the zoning. So I don't know, seems like it's, like there's a case, certainly a case can be made for it. The linkage fee, I mean, from what we heard, you know, it goes into a bigger, more viable pot of money. So then it's a matter of, you know, moving forward with that. And I don't, you know, I'm not sure how that works, but it's not just that amount of money that's not that, you know, doesn't do that much for us for a given project. But if it's something that's accumulating, hopefully that makes a difference. So those are my comments on the rezoning. I would make a recommendation to go ahead and approve that. Okay, so let's move on to building design and site plan. And the questions, we don't necessarily, I don't think we all have to talk about all of them, but I guess, let me just kind of take a quick look. The height.
Am I going first again? Or?
No,
Either way.
I'm totally fine with the building height. I think it's appropriate. It fits in well. There's shorter, there's taller. And this one fits the needs of that location. I'm not exactly sure what that next question means. Design building fronts that recognize traditional lot widths in town. I'm assuming that it's trying to align with the smaller individual buildings that are downtown. I don't find that to be all that important. I do like the smaller fronts in the historic part of town, yet I don't think that's an important component to continue throughout the developments downtown. Incorporate key architectural elements common to two buildings, it should say, right? Two buildings in downtown. You know, a lot of people, Keith Weber sent in a comment or comments today, and he has spent a lot of time looking at historical buildings and new developments on the peninsula. And he regularly points out Redwood City and some of their newer buildings that, to me, are very architectural pleasing. Yet it seems like our style here in San Mateo has been to embrace more of a modern type setting. Yet I do like some of the traditional components that they're doing in Foster City quite a bit. I'd like to you know, also refer to the couple of the commenters tonight where, you know, possibly in this setting, we could use more of the traditional components throughout the whole height of the project. Normally, this type of project that we're looking at here, with a lot of the glass, that fits in well in the newer developments like at Bay Meadows. You know, you expect that type of look. And this one, to me, I mean, I think it's an attractive building. I just don't think it fits in overall well with the community as it currently is built. I don't have any comment on the next one. recessed entrances to provide window shopping, pedestrian standing room, and protection from wind and rain. There seems to be a little bit of a debate about what works best. I do not personally like recessed entryways into buildings. It always feels as if they're not lit enough. They're not inviting. They don't say, "Hey, come on into my store." I like more of a solid plane without indentations. Window sizes, larger windows at the ground floor to enhance the ground floor commercial uses, and smaller windows on upper levels. I think that's a classic look that is not shown in this project here. I do like that look. I don't say it has to be, but I do like the different window sizes. I think it gives a building more inviting or architecturally pleasing component. Utilizing awnings and canopies to add depth to the ground floor storefronts and to provide a location for future signage. I like canopies, not a big fan of awnings. I don't think they wear well, ever. Canopies, I think, do add architectural features that are pleasing to the eye. Incorporate design elements to provide for alley that is architecturally attractive, safe and inviting for pedestrians, and accommodates the necessary back-of-house services and loading. Probably shouldn't say this in public. I love alleys. They serve a great element to buildings, and I think they should be given some special attention to make them pleasing. They're not only for trucks, they're for bicyclists, or they're for joggers, or for walkers. They really are a multimodal type of shortcut that if you do them right, they can be inviting and safe. And does the Planning Commission have other design or site comments? I do not. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Adam?
So I'll run down the list as well. So relate the height of the new buildings to the patterns of downtown. So I have no problem with the height, and I actually want to mention, I have no idea what the developer's timeline is for this, but consider that we have a general plan that's being updated, and perhaps that new general plan may make more sense for you. It just, we don't know what the future holds, so I'm not telling you one way to do one thing or another, but I'm perfectly fine with the height as proposed. The design of the building, so I'm going to have to agree with a number of the design comments from community members that we received, like Lori Watanuki, Rich Hedges, Keith Weber. I also want to especially highlight the recently completed project in Redwood City, 2075 Broadway, that Keith Weber's comment email mentioned. It's by Lane Partners. I think that the consistency of that building is preferable to me. I like, there's a lot of similarity in the lower 2 or 3 levels of this project at the facade to that project in Redwood City. But the upper levels are just, it feels too much of a mishmash to me. I find that it's like somebody wants to design 2 buildings and then put one on top, and there's just no relationship between them. And I know that was often something that was done last century to older buildings, and it never sits right with me. Maybe the Louvre is the the exception to that rule. This, to me, it just, there's no relationship between the two, and it's such a contrast unnecessarily that I just want this to be one building, not 2 buildings that are trying to overtake each other. to get into some of the architectural details, this is something that I noticed in a recent project downtown that another architectural team had proposed, and it's this kind of weak column with a somewhat semi-cantilevered looking portion where I'm talking about the what is it, the east corner of the building on First. I really don't like that. I think that it makes the structure feel floaty or cheap when you do that trick with the columns. I think the columns should match the scale and design of the material with the I guess they're pilaster-like walls between the windows of the lower levels. Again, I do want to mention I really do like the design of the lower level facades. I think it, reminds me a lot of some of the older warehouse buildings in the Bay Area that you see. However, I don't, in that same corner, I really don't like the stairwell. It's in the eastern side. It's this blank mass that is going to be seen every day by thousands of people on the train and people walking by on First, and it feels so back of house. It feels like it should not be this prominent place. It's going to be seen by thousands of people coming by San Mateo who are pulling in to our train station. If that was maybe a beautiful mural, I could be okay with that, but otherwise I would highly recommend having something more consistent with the architectural details of the surrounding walls, and providing more window space so it's not such a blank wall. I do love the signage along the corner of First and B. I think that's, kind of retro. However, the canopy, shade canopy on that corner of First and B and the kind of flimsy looking column just feels out of scale to the rest of it, and I feel like the building can't decide what it wants to be. So I don't like that part. I think that the use of the two significantly different styles of building on the top and the bottom to, in a sense, try to make it feel smaller isn't necessary. And it doesn't work for me. Now, if you were to change the color and have slightly more consistent stylistic interpretations on the top, I'd be okay with that. But right now, it's just too much of a contrast. And I also don't love the what is it called? The overhang at the top or of the upper level. It's just really coarse to me and blah. It's just out of scale to the rest of the detailing. That being said, as far as recessed entrances, I understand how one nice thing about recessed entrances is that you get the ability to exit the store without walking directly into the lane of pedestrian traffic. But, it's a trade-off for floor space. So, you have it in some places, in others you don't. I'm not going to be too hung up on that. I just think from a functional standpoint, they make sense. But not too deep, because then otherwise you make a dark hole that people have to walk into. And then awnings, canopies to add depth to the ground floor stores. I do like the awning portion on the northern corner as you're going down B Street. I feel like that does provide a good scale relative to the rest of this is on the first floor. I'd like to see something a little bit more similarly scaled or positioned on the corner of B and First. And then I am fine with the back of house loading zone in the alley. I imagine it's not going to get a whole lot of traffic from without the travel lane around the building that's currently there. So those are my comments on the building, and then the site comments I'll save for the public right-of-way area.
Okay, so my comments on the building design and site plan are probably kind of similar to some. I think that the height makes sense in this building. I think what the effort that's being made is to, sort of gear it towards the 2 or 3 story buildings with this lighter element on top to, to have the base of the building kind of relate to the rest of the historic downtown 2-story structures. So I think there's a good concept there. I also feel like I'm not there's a little too much going on there to make that read the way I think it's intended. I think it's intended to read as, this base building with something light on top, and that's lost a little bit because of these multi-levels of outdoor balconies and such. And I think it could be done in a little stronger way. And the thing about the comment about the future general plan is that, if this is mixed use high, it could potentially be an 8-story building, and, it would be residential, but on the other hand, it would be, another really big building along what is our, pedestrian downtown, kind of accessible, approachable kind of B Street. So I feel like this is, you're going in the right direction with the height and the number of stories as opposed to future much taller building there. In my mind, I kind of think the restraint is a little bit better at this particular location. We have a really tall building going in over at the TRAG site. What is that building, like 8? Is that an 8-story building? Oh.
I think it's 5, just because it would have to have utilized density bonuses that would be 100% affordable.
Oh, okay. So that's true. That makes sense. So there was a comment that it was, and I made a note that it was sort of timeless architecture. I don't know that it really is. It's got some interesting modern elements that I like, but they're not quite. They're just a little bit too much going on, as I said. But so I don't know that I think there's an opportunity to relate it a little more to the historical buildings along B Street, and I would like to see that. Let's see. I guess I should take a look here. That sort of covers the next item, I'd say. Incorporate key architectural common to buildings in downtown. Yeah, I guess that's sort of the same point, that there's an opportunity to tie it into the historic buildings. I'm not saying that like specific details that are in a historic building that aren't going to be in a more modern building, but I wouldn't want to see that. But I'm going to kind of skip over some of these things because I don't necessarily have a comment about them. Incorporate recessed entrances. I don't have a strong feeling about that one way or the other. I think that, I wasn't really sold on the corner cutout at 2 corners. It seemed like unnecessary to be at 2 corners. But then I guess as I kind of watched the presentation and, kind of got a better feel for it in the renderings, I think there's those recesses make sense. I don't think you necessarily need further recesses in a building of this size for, window shopping, et cetera. I totally agree that I think that corner cutout does not need the lightweight canopy up at like the 3rd floor level or something with the a kind of insubstantial post. I think it can just be an open area without that lightweight element that is unnecessary to me. So let's see. Utilize awnings, canopies. I guess I agree with John. I don't know that awnings are necessary here. They're not usually that, they're kind of a maintenance, or they need to be kept up to date. But I guess if there's an opportunity for some signage, but I also agree with that, with Adam, that there's a more interesting, fun way to do signage, like the way it's shown in the presentation, so in the documents. I like the alley too, and I think they're well used in town. I mean, there's an alley that kind of continues behind other buildings, so keep it, utilize it, incorporate design elements. I'm not sure that I feel too strongly about the stair or the view from the train. I mean, we don't want it to look like the back of the building, but I think, so long as the alley is not, sort of forgotten and the back of the building is not forgotten and it's addressed, I think it's possible to, certainly incorporate the kind of window treatment and those things along that alley. I just want to see if I had anything else. I guess one other thing I would say is there was a slide about the wellness and LEED. I don't know if it was LEED specifically, but sustainability and wellness. And we don't really see anything about LEED anymore. So I guess is nobody doing LEED buildings these days? I would love to, see it be a LEED building. I think it has an opportunity. You also, and actually, what made me think of that was that, there's an opportunity to create, the stair is sort of front and central when you come in that north entrance. And there's an opportunity to kind of create maybe a 2-story open stair, and then I guess it would have to be enclosed after that per code. But I would love to see that, make that stair in the front on B Street kind of something that's usable by people instead of the elevators. And I would love to see it be a LEED building. Okay, I guess that's all my comments on that. Moving on to the last item of discussion is the public right-of-way comments. And do you want to go ahead on that?
Sure, I'd love to, through the chair. I did forget one other component, and Margaret, you reminded me of it. This being a mass timber proposal, and probably, as far as I know, the first one ever in the city of San Mateo, would be very exciting to see for a variety of reasons. So thank you for that. Okay, so we're talking about current situations for the neighborhood. My biggest concern with B Street today is the pedestrian and bicycle master plans. And I think it is extremely important for B Street to be treated as one entity. We've had a few projects that have come to us recently, and it appears that each one of them wants to make some type of modifications to both the bike and the pedestrian experience. And my overarching concern is I want consistency, I want safety, and I want the safety of the cyclists and the pedestrians to be at the highest level of concern through this whole corridor. And I think that doesn't make any difference to me the width of the sidewalk, as much as we are not impeding or impeding on a safe bicycle route. This might all change. The whole block, the whole street might change. And my overarching goal has been for many years to get street closures in downtown on B Street. And one of the outcomes from the horrible pandemic has been trying to incorporate some of that downtown. And it's always been my feeling that B Street should be the street that is a pedestrian mall that would shine, and it would be so welcoming, and there's so many ways that we can do it. And it looks like maybe some of those conversations are continuing at a higher level, and I'm hoping that they continue to put the pedestrian experience much higher in importance than parking and driving your cars downtown. There are so many examples of great pedestrian malls that are the thriving parts of the city. So I don't want, but as today stands, I don't want to impede on any of the goals of the city for their biking and their pedestrians. So I don't want to impede on them whatsoever. I don't want to have bulb pump outs that impede my bicycle, or it's just not, it doesn't make any sense. The whole street is being broken up into segments because each lot has different constraints to be able to financially build the projects that are coming forward. If wider sidewalks are desired, should that additional width be created in the public right-of-way on private property or combination of both? And I think you have to be flexible, but I think you need to be flexible, but you also need to set your standards and stick to them. So if you're going to make it a bicycle path, then you can look at using private property and public right-of-way, but they have to be consistent the whole way. You can't be jogging in and out. You can't one block thinking that a car is going to open its door on you, and then the next block you have a protected path. It has to be one. The interactions between bicycles and pedestrians and cars, this is a great example where a city has the opportunity to ensure we can have net zero accidents. And I hope that our city leaders will continue to improve that part of town and look at it holistically. And those are my thoughts on that component.
So thinking about the public right-of-way, I know from conversations that the businesses across the street that would be remaining if this project goes forward were very in support of the partial closure of B Street that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that may be, that support could likely continue as this project is built. And so reducing the street to perhaps one lane or reconfiguring it to the pleasure of the businesses and property owners, to me seems like a very nice idea. To me, the safety of bicyclists and the comfort of pedestrians take priority in this chunk of B Street. And that's about all I have to say, because right now it seems very, very open-ended what's going to happen here with what the city council may decide. And, I would just say prioritize the safety of bicyclists and pedestrians and the comfort of pedestrians over anything else here.
Okay, thanks for your comments. I don't have a lot to add to this issue because I guess it's kind of a little, well, I'm not sure if this is a true statement, but it seems a little fluid right now, I guess, to me. And I do think the bike plan, there's a lot of work being done on that, and the pedestrian master plan. So in general, I think the wider sidewalk seems, at first, I guess I think the presentation gave me a lot of information, because at first I wasn't necessarily in favor of it, but then, you know, because I guess I want to continue that kind of, I guess, you know, the front of buildings, I guess, in the same kind of manner as the rest of the historic buildings. But I think the widened sidewalk does give us this opportunity to, like, you know, maybe have sidewalk seating, or, you know, I mean, all of these possible amenities that make for a really, you know, great experience. So, yeah, I think that, I guess 15 feet or wider is acceptable. I mean, it seems like I don't have too much enough of an opinion on that, I guess. I also can't really say whether or not it should be in the public right of way or on this private property, because again, I feel like there needs to be some relationship to the adjacent buildings, and in this project, you do have the adjacent buildings that go to the corner of Transit Way, I guess, and that's what we're trying to preserve in the downtown area. So I guess I would be in favor of, I don't know if I'd be in favor of taking it out of the public right of way. I'm not sure enough about that. But so I guess I only have limited comments on that. Probably need to get more informed on the pedestrian master plan. Okay, well, with that, I also just want to say that, you know, it's a great project. I mean, we had a lot of comments on the design and stuff, but I think that there's potential for it to be a really great, interesting project at a really important intersection that I kind of, you know, have been by it, walked it, biked it to the train, you know, a lot of times, and hadn't paid too much attention to it because there's a donut store there, which I try to avoid. So this could, you know, be a real, you know, interesting corner.
So through the chair, I had forgotten to announce that I have talked with the applicant.
Oh, that's right. We forgot that we were
prior to this meeting, and I have visited the site. So thank you.
Yeah, that's right. We're supposed to, you know, comment on any, you know, conversations we've had or site visits. And I mean, I've been by this site a million times, so, as of all of us, so. All right, I think that is all we need to do at this point. Look at my notes and see if there's anything else. We've been through all of our comments. We don't need to make a motion. So with that, I can close this item on the agenda. Are there any announcements or reports at this time?
Yes, I'll share a few. So just to note to the commission that there is a possible appointment of a new commissioner that may be moving forward to City Council on May 16th. So we'll hopefully have a full commission again. We are looking at scheduling election of chair and vice chair again. You may recall that happened recently when we lost our prior chair, but that is required in the bylaws, so we will find the appropriate time to schedule that on the agenda. Just to note that the housing element is going to the City Council at a special meeting on May 23rd. That might be at 5:30 p.m., so that's moving forward. And then the next Planning Commission meeting, which will continue in this format, and thank you to everybody for, you know, being patient with us as we resolve the issues, and you know, commending the staff and the commission for getting through our first hybrid format. But the next meeting will be on May 24th, and we have a few items lined up, including a public hearing item, a study session, as well as a general plan conformance request for that meeting. Those are all the updates from staff.
So, through the chair, what is the public hearing on? Which item?
At this point, we haven't yet released the agenda, but tentatively it's looking likely that the Block 21 project would come before the commission on that date.
Sorry, can you say that again?
The Block 21.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, if that's all the announcements and reports, then at this time, I can adjourn the meeting. Thank you.